Hello? Okay. I call this Albemarle County School Board meeting back to order. Do we have a motion?
We do, Chair Lee. I move that the board certified by recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved by Dr. Acuff, seconded by Mr. Page. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Alcaro is absent. Dr. Acuff?
Yes.
Dr. Berlin?
Yes.
Ms. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. Page?
Yes.
Chair Lee?
Yes.
So moved.
All right. Thank you very much. And then we have motions coming out of closed session. I can start. Okay.
I authorize the division to appoint candidate A for position A pending acceptance.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Berlin, seconded by Dr. Acuff. Could we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Dr. Berlin?
Yes.
Ms. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. Page?
Yes.
Dr. Acuff?
Yes.
Chair Lee?
Yes.
So moved.
Then we have another one.
And the second one is move that the school board enter into a lease for property A.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Osborne, seconded by Dr. Acuff. Could we have a roll call vote for that too, Christine?
Dr. Acuff?
Yes.
Dr. Berlin?
Yes.
Ms. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. Page?
Yes.
Chair Lee?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. Next, we'll have our roll call. We'll start with Mr. Holden.
Ross Holden, School Board Attorney.
Rosalind Schmidt, Chief Operating Officer.
Daphne Kaiser, Assistant Superintendent.
Rebecca Berlin, Whitehall.
Kate Acuff, Jack Jewett District.
Judy Lee, Rivanna District.
Graham Page, Miller District.
Ellen Osborne, Scottsville District.
Opal Kendall, Student Representative.
Matthew Hawes, Superintendent.
Pat McLaughlin, Assistant Superintendent.
Christine Thompson, Clerk of the Board.
All right, thanks very much. Next, we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Now we'll observe a moment of silence. Next, we'll have the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have a motion for that?
I move we approve tonight's agenda.
I second.
Moved by Ms. Osborne, seconded by Mr. Page and Dr. Berlin. We can do a voice vote on this. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next, we have approval of the consent agenda.
Chair Lee, I have a question about something on the consent agenda, but I don't necessarily want to pull it. How should I handle that?
How about we'll make a motion, and then we'll second, and then in discussion of the
Gotcha.
consent
Okay.
agenda, we can ask about that.
Was there a motion?
Not yet.
Go ahead.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Second the motion.
Moved by Dr. Acuff, seconded by Mr. Page. Let's do that as a voice vote. All in favor? Oh, wait.
We discussed first.
We discussed first, I'm sorry. Do we have
So-
discussion on it?
My question was about, there seem to be a number of new art classes being offered, and I think that's really great. I just wondered why. Do we have new instructors or availability, or what's going on?
Mr. Thomas is coming forward to answer your question. Thank you, Ms. Osborne.
Good evening, Jay Thomas, Executive Director of Secondary Education. Ellen, so our process is about a 1.5-year process for adding new classes. So anytime the teachers are interested in adding something to their program of studies, or they get with the kids or families in the school and the principal and say, hey, is this something, if we offered, the kids would be interested in? So you'll see a dual enrollment and an AP class that are both offered in the visual arts this year. So that's something that schools have been talking about for a couple of years, wanting to add to the program of studies. So that's what that is on there.
Cool, thank
So
you.
that doesn't necessarily mean somebody new will teach it. I think the
just
people
adding.
who are adding it were interested in teaching those.
Great, thank
So
you.
does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
That's all.
All right, we'll do a voice vote on this. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Motion carries. All right, next we have announcements. First, we'll have the spotlight on education. Opal Kendall.
Thank you, Chair Lee. Our strategic plan, Learning for All, commits us to building relationships with families and communities that ensure that every student succeeds. Among our division values is sharing the responsibility for student success with families and community partners. Nowhere are these words more apparent than at Scottsville Elementary School. They are part of a division-wide campaign under the leadership of Eric Irizarry to intensify our leadership program. During the previous year, our students and staff unofficially benefited from more than 5,000 hours of volunteer service. At Scottsville, a school of fewer than 200 students, parents and community volunteers contributed nearly 2,700 service hours. That's more than 50% of the division's total. This is not a new development for the Scottsville Tigers, which had in place a formal and robust program to recruit volunteers dating back several years. With us this evening are the leaders who are responsible for this remarkable community engagement and its further expansion. I'd like to ask Ms. Cindy Wells, Scottsville's principal, to share her thoughts about this program and introduce us to some highly dedicated professionals and volunteers.
Good evening, everyone. Cindy Wells, principal of Scottsville Elementary, and I'm just honored to be here tonight to be able to represent our school. We're a small community school that works together in so many beautiful ways on behalf of our students. One of the first items I learned about our school when starting this July is that, like Opal said, we are #1 in Albemarle County in volunteer hours. We may be small, we know every student and family, and we are exponentially proud of our collaboration. We have so many stories we could share, including how we worked together to support students before everyone had a bus route in August, or how families help carpool children after our after-school offerings. But it's most important for you to hear directly from our hard-working staff and our PTO that have given us this wonderful reputation. So first, I'm going to turn it over to Krista Liverman, my assistant principal, who will be talking tonight on behalf of Janet Lilly. She's unable to be here tonight. Then you'll hear from one of our teachers and our PTO president. While there are 4 of us here tonight, imagine the entire community in the auditorium with us. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Krista.
Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, everyone. We're so sorry that Janet Lilly, one of our office associates and our volunteer coordinator, couldn't be with us tonight, because she truly is the person that makes the volunteer magic happen at Scottsville. She's been our volunteer coordinator for the past 6 years. Her work ethic, her attention to detail, her use of the systems that are in place to register volunteers, make sure the safety systems are in place, are just crucial to the success of the work at Scottsville. We couldn't do it without her. Another part of what Janet does is to inspire all staff as well to connect with anybody in the community, invite them to come to our school, bring their talents and their passions, and this includes individuals and organizations. We make sure to recruit community members from all walks of life, which you'll hear about in a minute when Elizabeth shares. And then she and we do everything we can to make sure that the volunteers feel valued and welcome when they are with us out at Scottsville. Volunteerism at the school involves community partners, but it's also embraced by students as well. I was in a 5th grade classroom this morning and saw some reflections on a recent reading that they had done about volunteerism and leading a life of service. And a student had written a response on the board stating that simple actions of kindness can change lives. And with that, I will turn over to Elizabeth Cox, one of our amazing 2nd grade teachers, who also happens to be our current Teacher of the Year at Scottsville. She was elected last year by her peers.
Thank you, Krista. Good evening. Throughout my career, I've seen the difference that volunteers can make in our schools. I recently found out that I may have racked up the most volunteer hours in my classroom at Scottsville. My experience with Scottsville volunteers began during the pandemic. As some of you might know, Scottsville is a bit of a trek from Charlottesville. Therefore, we did not get a lot of volunteers from our Charlottesville-based programs. However, with the magic of Zoom, I was able to welcome some America Reads tutors into my classroom. They had easy access to us. These UVA students became a valuable asset to my virtual classroom. After our return to school, I was so grateful to become a regular host to several America Reads tutors. I don't know if suddenly everyone was so excited to be out of the house that they no longer minded the trip to Southern Albemarle, but I was happy to have them. I was also excited to be contacted by JAVA. I eagerly responded to their volunteer survey and was paired with Mr. Brownfield, a member of the Fish Mentors program. He has been a regular volunteer in my classroom over the last 3 years. He provides one-on-one reading practice with my 2nd graders. He is a great cheerleader for ST Math 2. He is also teaching several of my 7-year-olds to play chess. More than anything, he provides a calm, loving role model to my students, a pseudo-grandfather to many of them. Mr. Brownfield certainly isn't daunted by the drive from Charlottesville. He appears every Monday afternoon in my classroom like clockwork. He takes the time to learn every student's name and something they're interested in so that he can talk to them about it during their time together. Students volley for their opportunity to work with Mr. Brownfield each week. Then there are the volunteers from our Scottsville and greater area community that come to our school weekly to provide helping hands wherever needed. Some are retired educators. Others have no experience in the classroom other than the time they spent there themselves. But they want to lend their skills to help support teachers and students. They work with individual and small groups of students. They provide emotional support when necessary, available for a pep talk or just being a compassionate listener. They also help to carry some of the load of extremely busy teachers, making copies, grading papers, or helping students correct writing samples. Volunteers model to my students the importance of giving back to your community in their acts of service each week. I appreciate the efforts of the volunteers who give their time and energy to our school and my classroom. They are making a difference every single day. I'll now turn this over to Sarah Morris, our boundlessly energetic PTO president, which is also a volunteer position.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good evening. My name is Sarah Morris, and I am the Scottsville Elementary School PTO president. I'm a very proud Scottsville Elementary School parent. I went to Yancey, Walton, and graduated from Albemarle. I joined the PTO when my oldest son started kindergarten in 2018. I took on the role as president during the pandemic, and while those times were hard on the PTO, our numbers were smaller than ever before, but we were a strong, committed, and mighty group. Since the pandemic, we have significantly grown our numbers, and the group is filled with the most dedicated parents, guardians, grandparents, aunts, uncles, family friends, community partners, teachers, and our school administrators who are truly committed to supporting our school in every way possible. Scottsville is a tight-knit community, and I think we could better describe our community as a family. When we need all hands on deck, all hands show up in full force and with the biggest smile. We are thankful for our many volunteers. When I asked my PTO partners why they volunteer, their responses were, I believe public education forms the foundation of our democracy. Teachers serve as public servants, and their roles are crucial in shaping the future. The least we can do is support them in this very important work, raising the next generation of citizens. Another says, my motivation to volunteer is to give back to the teachers who have already given so much. We want them to know what they do matters. And another, I want to be involved in my kids' lives and support them. I want that for all of our students. We know as a group that all students deserve to know they are loved and supported, and if we can help a child love being at school by supporting field trips, hosting fun events such as festivals and dances, or bringing a magician to help make learning math fun, then we are doing our job and our hearts are full. Thank you to everyone who spends countless hours volunteering at Scottsville Elementary. We want you to know that you're making a difference in the world and that you're appreciated. To share a quote that speaks to our mission, the most powerful way to change the world is in the life of a child is to live the way you would like the world to be. The Scottsville Elementary PTO is inclusive, fun, talented, kind, generous, welcoming, and a dedicated group who would love to have you to our next event or our next meeting. We meet the third Thursday of every month at 6:30 just outside the gym, and we would love to have you there. Thank you for your time.
Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
I guess I have a question for you, Cindy, Ms. Wells. You've been with a much larger school as principal. What has made the difference in terms of the engagement of volunteers at Scottsville?
Yeah. Just like we've talked about, we know every child, every family, and so there's really a very, very close connection. And so I think that makes a difference. Everybody feels unique, feels special, feels connected, and yeah, I don't know how to say more than that.
I guess at your previous school, did you have, the woman who couldn't be here, Janet Lilly, was that her name? Mm-hmm. I tried to remember it. Does every school have a volunteer coordinator as part of the function? Okay.
Mm-hmm. We do.
So yours just must be exceptional.
We have an exceptional team, absolutely, and I was very lucky to walk into this exceptional school in July, so looking forward to continuing our path and our journey together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the questions that I have is, when you're so kind of focused on that school, which is where you should be focused on, have we done any kind of connections through the Office of Family Engagement of kind of the things that you are doing right that other schools could learn from? Because, I think it's so interesting. Did you say 50% of our volunteer hours for the county come from am I quoting that right? Come from a school that has 200 students, right? Like is how far outside of kind of the urban ring. And so how do we take what you have done and what are those magical pieces? Like, is it something the volunteer coordinator does that makes it that much easier for the PTO and that much easier for teachers?
Absolutely. I would say that without our volunteer coordinator, Janet Lilly, following through and making sure that volunteers are registered, that they are logging their hours, that they are connecting, that is a really big part of that. And then connecting with the Office of Community Engagement with our 4 events that we're doing this year. We're trying to really merge that with what our PTO is doing and what makes sense for our school. And so really meshing those things together too, and just building on all our strengths and our assets. So.
And the only other question I have is, I don't know, maybe for Elizabeth or Sarah, is how long has it taken to get? Has this always been as long as you've known a piece of this community, or is there a time that it started, right? As we think about other schools, like, does this take up to 5 years to really get to where you are as we begin to think about kind of planning for future?
This is my 6th year at Scottsville Elementary, and the years previous to the pandemic, I did not have a single volunteer in my classroom. I think we were so appreciative and searching for any kind of help that we could get to make sure that we were connecting with all of our students and providing as much support as possible to them during the pandemic, that we were lucky. And also, again, I know Miss Lily, I hope she is hearing all this praise that she's getting, but she is really phenomenal about when people call, they do not get lost in the mix. She follows through. She, have you gotten back to her? She really wants to volunteer. I'm like, yes, I can't use her, but I'm going to find somebody else who can. We just make sure that whenever we get an inkling that someone wants to spend some time in our hallways, we snatch them up.
Thank you so much.
Just, are all the volunteer hours done during the school day, or is this after school or before school as well?
All of those things. Before school, during school, after school, evening events, absolutely, we log everything.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Where do you see most of your volunteers going to? Are there any certain programs or subjects or grades that are getting more volunteers or more help?
That's a good question, and I wish Janet was here to be able to answer that. I'm just trying to think of my experience right now. So I would say it is family events, definitely. Connecting in the classroom. Those are the two that come to mind, so we can get back to you more on that. But it's really all about the relationship, though, right? Everything we talk about in Albemarle County, it's about the relationship and the connection and that relevance. And so relevance for the families or the community members, relevance for the children, and those connections are just spectacular.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
opportunity to talk about our school, and you all are welcome out anytime.
Thank you.
I would also like to share some timely news about another one of our elementary schools, Ivy Elementary School. On the cusp of celebrating Veterans Day, here are some important thoughts from President Biden. Our nation has only one truly sacred obligation: to prepare those we send into harm's way and to care for them and their families while they are deployed and when they return home. To all the mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, sons and daughters, spouses and partners, and loved ones who stand alongside our veterans and service members, you are the solid steel spine that bears up under every burden and the courageous heart that rises to every challenge. The president was talking about soldiers such as Cherie and Ross Flores. On active duty, Cherie was an Army captain. Her husband, Ross, is a retired lieutenant colonel and Army Ranger who saw combat in Afghanistan. Cherie also served overseas, and both will be honored guests tomorrow morning during Ivy's annual Veterans Day concert beginning at 9:30. Ivy is the first school in our division to be recognized as a Purple Star school for their support of military families in their school community. I understand that Ivy's principal, Jennifer Underwood, may be with us tonight, and I would like to ask her to stand to be recognized for the support her school has provided for those who serve to secure our freedom.
Thanks so much, Opal, and thank you, Ms. Underwood, for coming. Next, we have announcements. Do we have any announcements tonight?
No, ma'am.
Nope. Okay. Next, we have public comment and then the public hearing on candidates for the Rio District. First, we'll start with public comment. Mr. Page.
Thanks, Ms. Lee. Our guidelines for public comment. We invite and actively seek the public's input in matters relevant to school board governance and provide time in our business meetings to hear from our residents and community members. During public comment, we expect respectful and on-topic comments. Disruptive behavior from speakers or from members of the public in attendance will not be tolerated. Anyone who willfully disrupts the meeting in a manner that prevents or interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting may be ejected by the chair. Individuals and organizations wishing to speak during public comment must sign up prior to the meeting. Sign-up is available online beginning at 9 a.m. on the Monday of the meeting week until 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Sign-up is also available by contacting the clerk directly. Public testimony guidelines are as follows. Speakers should adhere to the following protocol. State name and address or voting district. Address comments to the school board as a whole. Limit comments to those matters that are relevant to school board governance or school division operations. Give written statements and other supporting materials to the clerk. If you are unable to complete the presentation in the time allotted, a copy of supporting materials will be provided to school board members. 3 minutes will be allowed for each speaker to speak. A color-coded light card system is used to time presentations. The yellow light means the speaker is 2 minutes into the presentation. And the red light means the speaker is at the 3-minute limit of the presentation and must wrap up. In order to maintain respect for all points of view, the school board requests no clapping, booing, or any other audible form of support or non-support be used. If members of the public wish to show their support for a speaker, they may stand or raise their hands. Debate and dialogue with the school board will not be allowed, and use of the projection system is reserved for staff scheduled only. Tonight we have 5 speakers in the first portion of our public comment. The first, I'll call them maybe in section or in groups of 2. So first is Vernon Lectie, and then Catherine Diatley.
Good evening. My name is Vernon Lectie. I'm a teacher at Albemarle High School, and I'm president of the Albemarle Education Association. Tonight I'm here to ask the school board to endorse the mid-year pay increase proposal that will be presented to the school board by Albemarle County Public Schools Central Office staff later this evening. I applaud the ACPS School Division's recommendation to provide a mid-year pay increase for all ACPS regular staff of 2%, and I encourage the school board to approve the mid-year pay proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lectie.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Diatley, and I'm a teacher in the Western feeder pattern. I recently found a comic strip showing a man, his horse, and a cart that was stuck in the mud. And no matter how many times the man yelled at the horse simply could not get the cart out of the mud by himself. So the man has 2 simple solutions. 1, he can get off the cart and push while the horse pulls, therefore working together to solve the problem, or he could get more horses. But instead, the comic strip shows the man going for the quote-unquote corporate solution, which has the man staying on the cart and inviting more people to come and yell at the horse. This solution, in fact, does not solve the problem, but only demeans the efforts of the horse and adds more work and stress. I bring this to your attention, not to be dramatic, but to show you that this is sort of what it's like to be a teacher and staff member in ACPS right now. The teachers and the staff are the horse. And you, the school board, Dr. Haas, and all 80-plus decision-making positions downtown are the man on the cart. And as you all know, our ACPS cart is stuck in the mud and has been for some time. And instead of providing us with the things we've been asking you for, such as more support, more staffing, more resources, and smaller class sizes, what have you done? You make us drive around this division to attend DPLCs, PLCs, PDs, and convocations that waste our valuable time. And instead of working with us and listening to us, you instead spend thousands of dollars bringing in outside consultants, such as the Gallup poll and Bellwether. And from our end, the solutions they have suggested are not solutions at all, but have only added to our overly burdened and heavy cart, making us sink even further. Now let's go back to a horse for a minute. Horses are strong, brave, intelligent, and hardworking, and dedicated and loyal when treated with respect and cared for. Horses who are continuously mistreated and expected to work well beyond their physical means end up breaking. The same is with us. The demands and expectations you are placing on us are breaking us to the point that you are taking away our capability to do this job to the best of our ability. You are expecting us to sacrifice too much in terms of our mental health, physical health, financial health, time, and family. And if things do not change, then you are going to begin to lose more and more of us, people who genuinely care and want what is best for the students in this division. And in the end, it will be the students who lose out, and this once top-rated division will only continue to sink further and further among the ranks. I ask you to please start working with us instead of against us. Start listening to us instead of ignoring us. And please trust us to do the job we love and we're hired to do. And if you're not willing to step off the cart and do the hard work with us to get us out of the mud, then please kindly step down so that someone who is willing to do the work can step up. Please work with the AA to pass a collective bargaining resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diatley. Our next speaker is Shay Hale, and our final speaker is via Zoom, Michael Strickler. But Ms. Hale.
Do I just start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Shay Hale. I'm a senior at Albemarle High School. I'm a member of the student council, involved with athletics, and the child of a teacher employed for over 20 years. I am here tonight to speak to the board members because I'm worried about what my high school is becoming. I'm aware all of you are returning members following the most recent election, and I hope that speaking to you tonight will allow you to consider making some changes to the way these buildings are run during your next term. When I look around AHS, I feel heavily discouraged. I feel discouraged because I know the grading policies in place are not giving me the long-term skills I will need to be successful in college. When the mindset you are fostering for students is an idea that anything we do is simply unimportant because we will always get a possibly undeserved second chance, students do not take it upon themselves to truly prepare and learn the material given to us, leaving so many with a lack of important skills and traits, a lack of study skills, a lack of initiative, and a lack of self-discipline. When I talk to my former classmates who are now attending college, they will be the first to say, loud and proud, that high school did not prepare them for the real world. I feel angry when students do the bare minimum and are allowed to pass, sometimes with the same grade as those who put in the work. As a student who does my work authentically and to the best of my ability, what is going to push me, and so many like me, to keep going when we could get the same promising grade by doing nothing? I feel overwhelmed frustration, not only when I watch my peers do petty teenage behaviors like cheat, skip class, yell at teachers, and so on, but also as they pull stunts and commit actual crimes without consequence. When I watch prominent students do drugs on campus, when I watch couples get into domestic disputes, when I watch teachers get struck during student altercations, and after all that, incidents both big and small, I see almost no consequences, and most of the consequences I see are equivalent to the slap on a wrist. I'm not saying as teenagers we shouldn't be able to live and have fun. No student, including myself, can honestly say they don't screw around a little. But does that chaos need to happen from 9 to 4 when we are trying to prepare ourselves for the world? When we watch a varsity basketball player physically assault his girlfriend and get to finish the season with the team, it should make anyone question how things are being run. When I hear people talk about A-Town, I often hear people say the building, and sometimes it's like the choices are being made simply for a building, not a community of teachers, students, and families. I think I speak for so many when I say changes need to be made to better the experiences for all of these teachers, students, and families alike. I don't know what those changes may entail, as that's not exactly my job, but I want to be able to go to school every day and not feel disappointed. I don't want to feel ashamed to admit I attend school in Albemarle County. We have so much potential as students and teachers alike, and I want to see it be fulfilled. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hale. All right, now via Zoom, Michael Strickler.
Chair Lee?
Yeah?
It's on his end. He's not connected correctly. We tested it earlier, and our system is working.
Well, we can do the public hearing, and
then
then
go
we'll
back
circle
to it.
back and see if
Okay,
he...
I'll let him know.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we'll now move into the public hearing for the Riley School Board appointment. We have 6 speakers. The first 3, Gary Taylor, Jane Duffy, and Randy Sackerson.
Good evening. My name is Gary Taylor, and I'm honored to speak on behalf of Jim Dellenbeck for the appointed position. My relationship with Jim Dellenbeck goes back over 40 years, but my connection with the Charlottesville and Albemarle communities goes back much further. I've been a county resident and business owner for most of my life. My children attended Albemarle County schools, as did my parents, and as did their parents. All of this is to say that I take this very seriously, and I know that Jim Dellenbeck would be a fierce advocate for the future of our community. 42 years ago, Jim and I attended the University of Virginia together and lived less than 50 yards away from one another in the first-year dorms. Since that time, he's been a teacher, a coach, a school tour leader, a business owner, a financial advisor to countless families in our community. He knows what it takes to write a lesson plan, to make a budget, and to meet payroll. For over 20 years, I've worked with Jim as partners at Northwestern Mutual. Throughout this time, I've watched him raise his own 4 responsible and successful children, while also giving of himself to a variety of causes, serving the future of our community, including Young Life, the Toy Lift, and a number of mission trips. I've seen his passion for families, children, and those less fortunate in our community. I'm proud to know Jim Dellenbeck, and I'm confident that he'd be a faithful steward for the children and thus the future of Albemarle County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Good evening. My name is Jane Duffy. I live in the Rio School District, or the Rio Voting District. I've known Jim Dellenbeck for a number of years, and I thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight and speak on behalf of my friend. I can confidently tell you that he is very qualified to fill the position for which you're considering him. Having been a K-12 teacher and administrator for over 40 years, as well as in the last 8 years a volunteer, I have worked with and under several school boards. I've witnessed what makes them very effective or not. What qualities do the members possess that set them apart, and how well does Jim match up to these attributes? They have a strong vision for the future, but they're grounded in reality. They are well connected to the community and the constituency they serve while understanding the challenges of today. Jim has been a teacher, a coach, and a parent in Albemarle County. schools. He's worked to make them become a place which ensured a bright future for his children. He's worked to make them, he's recognized the current challenges, but he wants to see our schools continue to flourish for our children of today. Good board members are strong communicators, and this begins with listening well. And if you know Jim, you know he listens and he asks great questions. Yes, he is articulate, but he will always first ask you what you think. He values everyone and every voice. They're also good team members. Being a coach makes this quality very relevant for him. He understands the value of team and the value of working together. He's got an incredibly humble spirit and will always put others above self. They understand what it means to produce a fiscally sound budget. As an administrator, I greatly valued the finance people on my team. How fortunate you all are to have someone available like Jim, whose second career is as a finance professional. He's got lots of letters behind his name, and it can attest to his in-depth training. He knows a bottom line. They know what is good for all students. That's what public education is all about. You serve a wide audience, and a shifting one at that. We have to know who our kids are and their families are today, and then plan for what they might become tomorrow. We cannot turn back the hands of time. This quality brings us back to my first point about a great vision. To conclude, it is an important job that you all do. To me, educating the next generation is the most important thing. And I know
Ms.
that...
Duffy, if you have other comments, you can pass them to the clerk.
I will. No, I'm just concluding right
Okay,
now.
all right.
And so I know that Jim Dillenbeck can fulfill that position for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Zackerson? All right, our next three, Lance Winsett, Kevin O'Shea, and Scott Hawken.
Just real quick, Mr. Page, it's Lance Wiesent.
Wiesent,
He's
okay, I was thinking I had murdered that name.
Taught at Albemarle High School for
Okay.
decades, so I just wanted to make sure we
All
got
right,
the
thank you so much.
That's important.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I am Lance Wiesen. I'm from the Jack Jewett District, and I am here on behalf of Jim Dillenbeck. Much of what I'm saying is going to be really redundant, but I think what I bring to this conversation is that as a teacher at Albemarle and as a coach at Albemarle, I had the opportunity to both teach and coach with Jim Dillenbeck. And also shared a couple hours on the sidelines of soccer games, watching our daughters play, and also made sure he was doing the job right when he built the deck on my house. But anyway, in all these areas in which I've known Jim, he's always been a person of intelligence and humility, integrity, kindness, and compassion. I mention the construction of my deck in my house because I got to witness firsthand Jim's attention to the fundamentals of building and the importance of foundations and details. I watched Jim as a teacher, coach, colleague, and parent build relationships. Jim was well liked and respected by students, athletes, teachers, parents, and administrators. I believe that ability to build relationships and work closely with others will be the huge asset that he'll bring to the operation of the school board. I know that Jim is a person with strong personal beliefs and convictions, but I also know him to be flexible and pragmatic, and he wants to get things done. As a former teacher, coach, and parent of a daughter who went through the Albemarle system, Jim has a life experience to understand and empathize with all those directly involved in the educational process. As a personal finance advisor and as a life coach for individuals in our community, Jim understands the financial consequences that the school board decisions have on individuals whose incomes are fixed. Jim will be a strong listener and representative to all stakeholders in Albemarle County Schools. And I think he would be a great addition to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, folks. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I'm also here on behalf of my friend, Jim Dillenbeck. Charlottesville's been my home for 25 years. I make my home in the Samuel Miller District out in Western Albemarle. And I'm thrilled to be here to talk about Jim and what a great friend he has been to me over the last 15 years. And I think there are traits that that friendship translates into a great school board member. The attributes that I'd like to point out about Jim are his loyalty, his passion, and his preparation. And I've had a chance to experience those firsthand. One of the things we've done together is we built this bike ride called the Journey of Awesomeness. And it's been an amazing journey. We started it from nothing, and we've grown it to a 60-person ride, $300,000 to the hungry and thirsty in the community, and it's been such a blast to work with them. And it really what comes through with Jim is the preparation. He is always on time, almost to a fault, one of those guys, but he's always ready. And as echoed by some of my friends here, his ability to listen and ask good questions is amazing, actually, and almost to the point of like, come on, yeah. But he always challenged me on this ride, and always had the best interest of the riders and the community in mind. And yeah, and it's just been a treat to watch him, to be with them, and for our friendship to grow. So no doubt in my mind that he would make a great school board member. I don't know a ton about how you guys operate, but I do know, Jim, that he cares, that he's passionate, that he asks great questions, that he'll be here on time, he'll be listening, and he will have all stakeholders in mind. So no doubt, confident that he'd make a great addition to the team here, and happy to be here for him.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea.
Good evening. My name is Scott Hawken. I live at 1930 River Inn Lane in Still Meadow neighborhood, which is in the Rio School Magistrate District, where my family and I have lived for over 10 years. First, I want to thank the board members for volunteering your time. I know public service is a thankless job. In today's politically charged and divisive environment, I truly appreciate the openness of the board to hear from the community before making this decision to fill this vacancy. I'm a father of 5, including a Albemarle High School graduate of 2021, a senior and a freshman who are currently enrolled in Albemarle, a 5th and a 2nd grader. So I have a vested interest in the success of our schools, students, and their education. My family and I have known Jim Dillenbeck for over 6 years, both on a personal and professional level. He is common sense, down-to-earth person that's always willing to help. As a longtime member of the Albemarle community and resident, he has deep roots in the area and wants to do the best for our schools and communities. With 10 years of teaching and coaching experience in the Albemarle school system and over 20 years of his business experience, I think he brings the right combination of fiscal responsibility and practical knowledge to the board. Personally, we've connected over similar family values, and Jim has both mentored and advised my wife and I in raising our kids and preparing them for the future for a successful life. The decisions and actions the school board makes have such a huge impact on our students and our community. Board members need to have strong communication, a collaborative approach, and practical experience for success. I believe Jim brings all of those traits to the board. His experience as a father, former teacher and coach at Albemarle, his community involvement, financial training, and acumen, common sense approach will be an asset to the school board. I encourage Jim's appointment to the board to represent me and the Rio District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawken. All right, moving back, Ms. Thompson, is Mr. Strickler available?
Yes, sir. Hello? Yes, Mr. Strickler, you can go ahead and speak now.
Thank you very much. I apologize for the technological issues before. Greetings, school board members. I'm Michael Strickler from the Rivanna District. I'm a band teacher at Monticello High School and a parent of 2 ACPS elementary school students. I strongly feel the need to address the proposed 7-period academic schedule. I hope tonight that I can show some of the many reasons why this poorly designed schedule change should be sent back to the drawing board. I also hope that many of you will come visit my classroom or upcoming performances to discuss this further. Many students, parents, teachers, and counselors in my school are concerned with the lack of student elective choice in scheduling that will come from this change. This change will cause many courses to not be offered in our schools, specifically CTE classes that have hard caps on student enrollment and performing arts classes where teachers like myself teach 6 distinct preps that will have to drop to 5, therefore eliminating a course offering. Mind the fact that I'm against this schedule and still have 6 preps to do. This is not about workload for me. As far as student choice and pursuing passions, with the current schedule, the average advanced diploma student has time to take only 1 elective in 9th grade. This should be 2, but unfortunately for our students, ACPS gets in the way by mandating freshman seminar for all. They can take 2 electives in 10th grade, 2 in 12th grade, 11th grade, and 4 in 12th grade. As such, students can only achieve a maximum of level 4 in 1 elective and level 3 in a second elective. This proposed schedule change will drop 10th and 11th grade down to 1 elective each year, meaning that we have a system in which students cannot achieve high levels of specialization in our electives only because of ACPS mandated non-curricular class time. Music courses and other electives are valid, and this non-curricular time and more valid than this non-curricular time, and Virginia Department of Education and the Every Student Succeeds Act agree by labeling classes like music as core subjects. My children and current high school students deserve the ability to pursue these passions beyond their graduation requirements and should not have to take summer school or virtual courses in order to have time to do so. I also am concerned that the data presented in the presentation you're going to see is from 2021 and 2022. It is out of date and comes from a pandemic-riddled mess that we were going through. We need modern, up-to-date data before jumping into such a drastic change. Our current remediation and enrichment programs, like Mustang Morning and Monticello, have the potential to work better than throwing out the baby with the bathwater by creating an entirely new schedule. I sincerely hope that you will put a pause in this program and hear out more of my arguments and the concerns of dozens of students and parents and counselors that I have talked to at Monticello High School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Strickler.
Thank you.
This ends our public comment section. Ms. Lee, Chair Lee.
I just wanted to thank everyone who came to speak tonight. We have many voices that we hear from, and we had some voices that we do not often hear from, so I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out and speaking. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have school board and superintendent business. Dr. Haas?
So I'm going to ask Dr. Kaiser to come up and talk a little bit about making connections, and then she's got another piece to bring to you around the day before the Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you, Dr. Haas. This Monday, all school division employees participated in Making Connections. That's our Albemarle County Public Schools conference by and for our employees. While we have done Making Connections for our teachers for quite a number of years, this is the second year that we have held Making Connections for our support staff as well. At the instructional Making Connections, which was held at Monticello High School, teachers, counselors, instructional coaches, LTIs, equity specialists, teaching assistants, and other instructionally focused staff had the opportunity to choose from sessions throughout the day on a wide range of topics by both our own educators and experts in various fields. Some of the sessions included topics such as the science of reading, responsive classroom, using rigor to ignite learning, grading clarity, differentiation, and an opportunity to connect with teachers of the same grade level and content areas. Additionally, sessions around retirement, benefits, and pathways to teacher licensure were available, as well as an opportunity to give feedback regarding some things such as the Southern Feeder at Elementary School, the theory of change, and the instructional coaching model. At Albemarle High School, our support staff chose from over 80 sessions. Some of these sessions were very role-specific, such as supporting students in wheelchairs on the bus, ladder safety, and managing data in the student information system, while others were broader and supported career development with a focus on customer service, leadership, conflict management, addressing mental health, payroll open lab, and sessions to assist employees with understanding their benefits options during open enrollment. Additionally, a wellness fair was available, complete with a blow-up colon. I want to recognize and give a big shout out and thank you to Megan Wood, our Director of Professional Learning, and Kelly Wertman, our Professional Learning Specialist, for all of their planning, initiative, and energy to make Connections a huge success. Additionally, I would like to thank the members of the Departments of Instruction, Human Resources, and other support departments for their help in preparing Making Connections. To all of our employees who presented, thank you for making Connections such a successful event. Without your willingness to share your expertise with your colleagues, this amazing annual event would not be possible. And to all of our employees who were in attendance, we appreciate their thinking and participation in this shared learning experience. Finally, a big thank you to our school board. I know a number of you had the opportunity to attend some of our sessions at each of the schools, and it's the board's continued support of professional learning that allows us to be able to do this. So, great annual event, and we very much appreciate your being there. That's my first one. In my second one, we have an ask of you. The Virginia Department of Human Resources Management has released their calendar, and it indicates on that Wednesday, November 22nd, is a half day for state employees. As such, we request that the school board consider approving Wednesday, November 22nd, as a half day for all ACPS employees who are scheduled to work for that day. As an example, an 8-hour employee would have to work 4 hours, a 6-hour employee would work 3, and a 4-hour employee would work 2 hours. This applies to all 11 and 12-month employees, as our 10-month employees are not scheduled to work on that day, as it is a non-student day. We thank you for your consideration and hope that you are able to make that decision tonight so that we may communicate with our employees should that change be made.
Any discussion or motion?
My question in these situations is always, is there anything that has already been planned that cannot be postponed? Any kind of emergency oversight that someone needs to make sure occurs? I know there's no children in schools those days, but I always think about those things, so.
There's no conflict that we are aware of. And this is something that seems to happen at this time of the year when they make that change at the state level. I move that the school board approve a half-day schedule for employees as outlined by Dr. Kaiser.
A second.
Moved by Dr. Acuff and seconded by Mr. Page. Can we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Dr. Acuff?
Yes.
Dr. Berlin?
Yes.
Ms. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. Page?
Yes.
Chair Lee?
Yes.
So moved.
All right, great, thank you.
And while I have the microphone, I'm going to keep going. We have a number of very special people in the audience tonight, people who every day go into their schools and do Herculean things to focus on learning and support students and staff in making everything better and working to achieve really great outcomes. So to our principals who are in the audience, I'd like to recognize, and you guys can stand up if you want, Jen Underwood from Ivy. Cindy Wells was here from Scottsville. Jen Sublett is here from Western Albemarle. Beth Costa from Monticello. Mike Irani from Agner-Hurt. Seth Kennard from Mountain View. Steve Saunders from Greer. Josh Walton from Walton. Jeff Prillman, principal of Center 1. Dara Bonham from Albemarle High School. Amy Morris from Broadestwood, and Leslie Wills Taylor from Stone Robinson. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for what you do every single day.
That, I think, concludes information, our business, and I see that we have an agenda item there for Ms. Schmidt to get an update on transportation.
Good evening, I'm Rosalind Schmidt, Chief Operating Officer. Tonight I'm bringing the latest transportation update to you. Here is a summary of the data presented at each business meeting this school year. The column on the far right is the latest information. We are now fully serving all students in the morning and have 0 routes that are fully open in the morning and afternoon. We do have 2 routes which remain open in the afternoon only, and this is impacting 160 students. If all goes as expected, 2 of our 5 trainees are scheduled to complete training this week. They will do what we call ride-alongs on their future routes next week, and then effective November 20th, these remaining open routes will be filled. That's a key milestone. So I don't want to go over it too quickly, but I will be transparent that our staffing continues to remain challenged and our applicant pool has dwindled, so we are committed to continuing to work on this challenge.
When did you say that 2 new drivers would be up?
Effective November 20th, if
Thank
all
you.
goes as planned.
Which schools are affected by the 2 routes?
Right now, there is one open route that serves Mountain View and Walton, and then there's one that serves a Journey and Albemarle, one combined. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schmidt. Next, we have our school division business. We have the high school 7 academic schedule from Jay Thomas.
I haven't used a mouse in years. Is this touchscreen? Open. Thanks, Rosalind. That's old school technology there. Mouse.
Computer. Which one? This one?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't, well, I guess if I put on my glasses, I can see.
If you just.
Thank you. You just want to stand up here and do this for me?
Thank you. Yeah, I think you
Thank you all. Sorry about that. The Jay Thomas, Executive Director of Secondary Education. Thank you for allowing us to present to you today. With me are the high school principals, counseling directors, and several people from the committee that's been working on this this presentation with us today, representing our schools. So what are we talking about? We are talking about the high school schedule and workload. And the conversations we've had have embedded in our vision, our mission, our values, but specifically our strategic goal. So part of our strategic goal, as you see our 3 goals, right, is thriving students is one of them. And we are asked, according to the strategic plan, to look and investigate the value of implementing a 7 academic schedule versus the 8 that we're currently on. Essentially returning to the schedule we were on 14 years ago before the board abruptly went to a 4x4 schedule. So that's what we've been tasked with looking at and analyzing. We've been having the conversation for several years. We've gone out to the schools. Most recently last year, Dr. Haas and I went to faculty meetings at all of the high schools and asked anybody who was interested, anybody, if they wanted to be on a committee to help gather information and discuss this. Had about 35 people that expressed interest and about 20, 25 that showed up regularly at the meetings. After the first meeting, and it was discussed, the strategic plan that we were asked to investigate, the teachers actually helped develop the agenda, take information back to the schools and bring it back to continue the conversation. And what you're going to hear tonight is a product of those conversations that they saw. Some data that's gone out to all of our different stakeholders over the last couple years and the discussions we've had. So what we're here to do is present to you guys our investigation of the 7 academic schedule. So as each of the 5 members come up, they'll introduce themselves and say what school they're with. And we are going to start with Michelle Karpovich.
Forward.
It's just a little...
This right here. Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Karpovich, Western Albemarle chemistry teacher. Sorry, I did come down with a little cold before I came here tonight. And I've been teaching in your county for 26 years. This is my 26th year.
You can pull the mic down.
Sure. So I've been here to see several different schedules. I've been here for quite a while, as you can see. But I remember when we actually used to teach on a 7-period day. So I remember when students had 7 periods. I remember when teachers taught 5 out of 7. And for the last 14 years, I have been one of those teachers that has been teaching 6 out of 8. So I was asked to address basically how did we get here. And so prior to 2010, as you guys might know, some of you might not because it's been a while, but we did actually used to operate on a 7-period day schedule. Teachers in that schedule taught 5 out of 7. And we did not actually offer intervention or enrichment times, or if we did, they were typically bundled in with something else. Like, for example, at Western, we had what we called care, and that occurred during lunch. So any intervention and remediation that we did with students took place during an extended lunch period. I know that Monticello had Monticello Mustang mornings, Patriot periods, different things, but there wasn't a set-aside time for intervention and remediation. Back in 2010, we did sort of fall into a recession, and the school board voted unanimously in one single meeting to add an 8th period to the academic schedule. And this was something that was done, I think, to save money. And in this particular scenario, teachers were asked and expected to teach 6 out of 8 instead of 5 out of 7 classes. And we have been operating on that particular schedule since that implementation. And I think we started that, in the fall of 2011? Was when we switched to that 8-period day. Originally, it did start as a 4x4 schedule, with the exception, I think, of AP classes. They were not on the 4x4, but all other classes were put on the 4x4 schedule. There were struggles with the 4x4 schedule, but the bottom line was that we were in a really tight recession. The board needed to save money, and so what they chose was to go to this 8-period day schedule in order to save about $800,000, so about $1 million in the school budget was what we were looking at. After the initial implementation of the 4x4 schedule, the school board did allow us to, I think, develop individual schedules to choose whether to stay on the 4x4 or to go to an alternating block schedule. I think some of our schools did it one way and others did it another way. But eventually we got to the point where we wanted all of our schools to be on the same schedule because we had too much going on at too many different places. One of the things that I do remember is I remember being here, standing before the board, talking about our concerns about the move from a 7-period day to an 8-period day. I remember that parents were very concerned. I remember that students were concerned. I remember that teachers were concerned. We all expressed those concerns in community meetings. We talked about it here in school board meetings. All of us had serious reservations about this change and obviously the reasons behind the change. But basically what happened at that time was that all of our concerns were bypassed by the school board in order to save money. We have come to a point in time where we're trying to look at decisions that were made in the past, think about whether those were good decisions, think about whether those decisions are moving us in the right direction. And right now, we're trying to correct something that we think has really added a lot of work and a lot of stress to students as well as to teachers. We heard from all academic researchers at the time that this decision was made that adopting a new schedule for the purpose of saving money was the least valid reason for actually adopting a schedule. But that was completely ignored in favor of saving money. Our panorama surveys, our Gallup surveys that are completed by our students, our VDOE surveys, all of these indicate that our comprehensive high schools, that they have the least conducive climates for learning and safety. And we're trying to fix that. We're trying to go back to a place where that is not the case. Our students' performance on SOL tests, standardized tests at the high school level, they have diminished since this change from a 7-period to an 8-period day. The current schedule that all of our high schools are operating under, we all have 8 classes. Teachers teach 6 out of 8. And in addition to those 8 periods, we also have scheduled enrichment time or intervention time. At, for example, Western, we call that warrior period. At Albemarle, they call it patriot period. I think at Monticello, it might still be Mustang mornings, okay? Each one of us calls it something different, but each one of these is approximately 30 to 35 minutes each day on top of the 8-period schedule. A growing percentage of our students actually need more intervention time, and we need more time with teachers. Students need more one-on-one time or small group time with their teachers in order to achieve success. And so we're trying to provide that. This is one of the reasons why we're considering the 7+1. Initially, one of the things that was, sold to us, told to us, is that if we switch to the 8-period day, we'll have students that will increase their enrollment in elective classes. That was one of the big selling points that was supposed to make us feel good about switching to the 8-period day. Everybody will take more electives if we offer more classes. Parents were concerned about students overloading themselves. Teachers were concerned about the additional workload with teaching 6 out of 8. But again, the board decided to bypass that to save money. So initially, in 2011, we did see an increase enrollment in electives courses, but that very quickly leveled off. It tapered off. And instead, what we started to see was students consistently, year to year, enrolling in one or more study halls, rather than using the extra 8th period to enroll in any kind of electives course, whether it was taking extra foreign languages, taking music, those types of things. What we were seeing was that more and more students were just enrolling in study hall every single year. We were also told that this would give more students the opportunity, at least at that time, we were told that more students would have the opportunity to achieve the advanced studies diploma by having the 8-period day. And that has not panned out. What we have seen is that the students that are achieving the advanced study diploma, those numbers have plateaued. And so they are not, again, using the 8th period to actually increase their course enrollments and get more advanced studies diplomas. We do, as a division, have very ambitious goals for all of our students. We are trying to expand our, horizons. We want students to engage in things more than just academic. We would like to provide that enrichment opportunity as well. But we need, students repeatedly say that they need time during the school day when they're in the school building. They need that access to their teachers. And repeatedly they say to us that 30 to 35 minutes each day, or every other day, or 4 days a week, or 3 days a week, whatever it happens to be based on the week, that's not enough time to be able to engage in the intervention that they need with their classroom teachers, as well as the enrichment activities that they would like to do outside of class. So we are, again, by thinking about and talking about the 7+1 schedule, we're trying to put time in the schedule for students to be able to meet with their teachers, to have productive intervention time, and also to be able to engage in club activities. And, at Western, we have once a month, we have Fun Fridays. We'd like to be able to have those types of things more often and for our students to have more choices. As Mr. Thomas was saying earlier, Jay Thomas, when he was up here, he said that he and Dr. Haas visited all the high schools. I was there for one of those meetings this past spring. They were discussing this issue, talking about what the data was telling us, that we had hoped to see that more students would be getting advanced studies diplomas, that more students would be engaging in more electives courses, those types of things, but that the data was not actually showing that. And so they wanted to talk about, how are we going to tackle this issue? How are we going to get folks on the same page? And so they did ask for all of us teachers, for anybody that was interested, to join. Dr. Haas knows that he and I do not always agree on everything, but this is something that we can agree on. And we've got to learn how to come together and work together on issues where we have a common goal. And so that's why I volunteered to be on this committee. This is something that I feel very passionately about. Again, having worked in this school division for 26 years, I know what it was like to teach 5 out of 7. And I know how much my workload and my stress level has increased by teaching 6 out of 8. And I can tell you that I would love to go back to 5 out of 7. I would like to decrease the number of students that I'm responsible for every year and the number of preps that I have to teach. And I would like to have that built-in intervention time to work with the students that do need that intervention with their classroom teachers. So what we've been doing as a committee, we've been coming together. I would say we've met at least monthly or every other month to talk about possible bell schedules. This has not been easy, but we are at least, trying to figure out what common ground we do have. And all of us that are there do share sort of the passion that we would like to return to the 7+1, 7 courses plus 1 academic enrichment and intervention period. So some considerations as we are talking about the 7+1 schedule. This does not in any way affect the CLCs. The CLCs will continue to operate regardless of whether we are on a 7-period day or an 8-period day schedule. All right, so we can sort of take that debate off of the table. We plan to have the CLCs operating under either one of these schedules. The schedule would eliminate the required freshman seminar class. I know that there was concern expressed earlier that students only have 1 slot in their schedule as freshmen to be able to take an elective. And part of that is because of the freshman seminar course that the division has been running for the last few years. We would like to see that freshman seminar pulled into the +1 in the 7+1 idea, in the 7+1 schedule. We think that could be half-time, maybe even a quarter time, okay? The division and leadership, we are looking towards a cost-neutral approach so that we're not going to see a huge, expansion of the budget by going back to a 7+1. We are looking at consequences, potential consequences to both teachers and students. We are documenting our structures. We are thinking and sort of bouncing off of one another what potential solutions are. I think almost every meeting that I've been to, someone has brought forth a new possible schedule and talked about. And we've always, sort of gone back and forth and said, here's what we like about this, here's what we don't like about this. How is this going to affect the kids that attend K-Tech? How is this going to affect the kids that attend CLCs? So forth and so on. So we are thinking about all of the potential consequences. Teachers at all of the high schools, what we are doing is we're periodically going back to them and saying, here's what we've come up with. What are your thoughts and ideas? Can you please give us feedback? So we've sought that feedback on a regular basis. We are working on new draft products. We still haven't landed on, we think this would be the most ideal 7+1 schedule. There was one that we came up with in September that was the first time we'd ever seen it, and everybody went, ooh, that might actually be a really good idea. So we would like to take that back to teachers. What we're looking to accomplish here is we'd like to see that we can go back to our teachers with a 7+1 schedule and essentially some type of bell schedule and try to get at least 70% of our teachers on board with this so that we could move forward with a new bell schedule in the fall of 2024. So there you go. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Glover, and I am an English teacher at Albemarle High School, and I have the impossible task of giving you the perspective of all teachers. We're obviously not a monolith, but I'm going to do my best to encapsulate what I've heard over the course of being on this committee. I've heard everything from what we just heard from Ms. Karpovich. I remember the 5 out of 7. This is exactly what I want. This was much better. I absolutely want it. And I've heard everything ranging to what Mr. Strickler shared at the beginning of the meeting. This might kill my program. I don't know about this change. I'm happy where we are. But what I have noticed over the course of our meetings, both with teachers in our comprehensive high schools meeting, as well as in departments at Albemarle High School and in our Albemarle High School meetings, is that some of those extremes have sort of moved toward the middle. And so I'm going to do my best to share with you what I think is the broad consensus teacher perspective on this potential move. What we know about our current state right now is that we have a remediation block that's about 35 minutes. It is often compromised by the need to conduct surveys or to hold clubs, or at Monticello it's only scheduled 4 days a week. And this over time really limits the amount of time I have to work with individual students for remediation, for retakes, and for enrichment. Sometimes I'm able to work with a student in their study hall if it happens to align with my planning block. That's a great time to pull a kid in and work, which works only, I guess, 2 out of 8 times, right, with my planning blocks. Sometimes I'm able to pull a student in during another class if I can get everyone going and work side by side with the student, but it's not an ideal situation, right? What we do know would change under a 7+1 academic schedule is that there would be a guaranteed daily time of that 35 minutes, untouchable time that for sure I could meet with kids to do remediation, to conduct retakes, and to enrich and push learning. Because everything that I mentioned that sometimes compromises that time would be moved to the would be moved to the additional block out of the 8. There is also some potential that we could mine, and the reason I'm calling these some potential of the 7 academic schedule is because it would all depend on how it's scheduled and managed at each individual school. Teacher PLC meetings could be moved to the additional block. I'm a member of 3 PLCs, so that's 3 times that I'm in the English 12, English 9, and credit recovery PLCs, and so time is pulled for meetings with those teachers. If those were moved to the additional block, then perhaps that would give me more time in my plan, or it absolutely would give me more time in my planning block, where I could give better feedback, I could be more thoughtful about designing instruction and how I'm going to offer balanced assessment to my students. Again, if it's depending on how it's structured, in that additional block, that could be a time I could pull a student in for longer than 35 minutes, because that is so fast. It is so hard to do deep learning and to really get into a piece of writing or a piece of reading, just as I'm sure it's hard to get into a lab or whatever other teachers are concerned with as students. Hopefully, a longer block of time would be able to get us to some more rich learning and relearning. Time is the most scarce of all of our resources, it feels like, in the building, and the idea of having more minutes to work one-on-one with students who need my help sounds fantastic to me. Another thing that we're working toward is a more balanced workload for high school teachers. Right now, as teachers are teaching 6 classes, we have a lot who have 3 or more preparations, which can put a difficult planning burden on teachers. If we move to 5 out of 7, then more teachers will be moved to having 2 preps. Which means a larger percentage of their planning time could be allocated to each class. The other thing that this would do is delivery of instruction would move from 6 times to 5 times over the course of 2 days, which is, again, a more balanced workload for teachers. So that is my, highly caveated, broad brush stroke of what teacher perspective would be on this change. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Timms, a teacher from Monticello High School. As Shannon had to go over the teacher perspective, I now get to cover the student perspective. It gets more daunting as we go here. So I have for you some data that has been collected over the past few years. What you're looking at first is the results of the 2021-2022 secondary student check-in survey. The first few questions here really ask students about how they're feeling, talk about student well-being. You can just see, and again, as was brought up previously, this data is coming after the pandemic, and we do know that things have changed. Students are feeling in the middle between relaxed and stressed at school. It's on the higher end of connected, which we love to see. Students also, when the survey gave feedback on how they're feeling on engagement, how they're feeling about their health, and how much emotional support they feel like they have at school. I think part of the shift to a 7 academic would be to devote more time to relationships, which would potentially strengthen the answers to question 11. How much emotional support do you feel you have at school? When asking about a change to a 7 academic schedule, an important question to note is how important is it to have a schedule where students have the ability to meet with teachers, counselors, administrators, or mentors during the day? And you can see that a majority of students feel that it is important or very important to meet with their teachers, counselors, administrators, or mentors during the day. And while we do currently have a enrichment intervention plan in place. As was stated earlier, it's not consistent every day in every school, and with a 7 academic schedule, it would be. Another question that was asked to students about a 7 academic schedule was if they felt it was important to pursue personal interests such as clubs, intramural sports, and specialized electives. You can see again here that a majority of students feel that it is important or very important to pursue those things. Moving to a 7 academic schedule would provide that extra block of time for students to potentially explore clubs, intramurals, other electives within the school day. And the last bit of data I have here from that student check-in survey is how much would moving to a 7 academic period schedule improve students' academic mental health. And here you have about 50% of students saying that it would improve it a little or a lot, with an additional 33% saying it would keep things about where they are now. A bit of information that was brought in when we looked at why was how many students are enrolling in study halls. So here is some data from this current school year about the number of students who are enrolled in study hall at each of the 3 comprehensive high schools, broken down by grade, the total number of students, and what percentage of the student population that you have. And so you can see it varies amongst the high schools. It grows from 9th through 12th grade as students are potentially finishing with some of their academic needs and moving into taking a study hall or a free block. In addition, we felt it was important to note how many students take initial credit courses in summer school, which may account for some of the study hall time during the school year. And so you see here, again, by the 3 comprehensive high schools, the number of students who this past summer were enrolled in either Health 1, Health 2, PE 1, or PE 2 by school. And then on the next slide, the economics and personal finance, which is also available during the summer for initial credit. And then of note, not shown here, are the number of students who had to complete a credit during the summer to stay on track for graduation. And finally, I have for you some data on the student enrollment in virtual courses. So these are courses that they're taking outside of their academic day, and that's broken down by the 3 comprehensive high schools, 9 through 12, and you can see it varies from school to school. This may also account for some of the study hall registration. And I think that's the end for me. I'm turning it over to the counseling directors.
Good evening. I'm Amy Wright. I'm the school counseling director at Western Albemarle High School. And in putting all of the work that we did together between last spring and this fall, we worked under these operating principles. And what we thought was important in discussing this is that students would get the learning experience that they need. And that within that learning experience, that they had the ability to get the extra support and enrichment, and that there was a reduced workload for students. And on the teacher side, again, we wanted them to have a reduced workload with flexible planning and to have good, creative, productive meeting times. So in order to create that, some out-of-the-box kinds of things we thought about with flexible learning experiences so that students and teachers could work some kind of Saturday things, perhaps some kind of night school, perhaps add to our virtual programs, perhaps add some courses during a zero period, continue to build our internship programs and capstone programs. And with all of this, we wanted to use data in our decision-making, and also include our anti-bias, anti-racism, equity conversations and data decision-making tools. And the other thing we thought about was our timeline for course registration. And you can see that it's begun. So we, at each of the schools, we will have curriculum fairs, and those will begin in December and through January, and that's where families can come in and see what the courses look like, talk to teachers and students about the courses that they're excited about. And then counselors will be going into classrooms to talk to students about diploma types and graduation requirements and how to build a good schedule. That will happen the beginning of January, or the beginning of December through January as well. For rising ninth graders and their families, we'll have an information night. For us, that'll be part of the curriculum fair. And for engagement, students who are rising ninth graders will come in over the summer for student orientation to each of their schools. And counselors will also be going over to middle schools to have the same kinds of discussions we're having in 9th through 11th grade about how to choose courses for the following year. Our freshmen, through their freshman seminar classes in a couple weeks, will have a 2-day lesson that talks about the career learning communities and why they might be good choices for them. And then the student portal, which is where the students will make their course selections, that will open up in December, on December 4th, and it will close on January 2nd, because starting on January 3rd through the 24th of February, this is probably most counselors' favorite part of the year, where we meet individually with every single student and their family, and we talk about their individual course requests and how that fits with them. And the meeting doesn't start with, what classes do you want to take next year? The meeting starts with, how's your year going? And what are you planning to do when you get out of high school? And that conversation is what's going to drive how we choose their courses. And finally, they have pretty much through at the last Friday in March to make those decisions. And in the beginning of March, we sent home a course verification letter to say, this is what you've signed up for. Make sure this is what you want, because we're going to lock it in at the last Friday of March.
Hi, I'm Megan Parsons. I'm the counseling director at Albemarle High School, and we were also tasked with the question about how a 7 academic schedule would affect student transcripts. So every school has a school profile that goes with transcripts when we send them off to colleges, universities, or wherever we're sending the transcript. And that profile includes information such as number of courses available to students in a school day, and lists all the honors, AP, dual enrollment courses that are offered at that school, along with the specialty programs across the divisions such as Center One, K-Tech, the Junior ROTC program, Early College Scholars. And we have been told by college admissions that initially they evaluate applicants within the context of their school profile that has accompanied the transcript. And then school divisions, since school divisions across the country have different practices for documenting student achievement on a high school transcript, college admissions are aware of this and these multiple practices, and take those variations into account while they're doing their admissions decision process. The other important thing to note is that only credit-bearing classes are offered or are listed on the transcript as courses in progress. So it does not list study hall or release or anything that does not have a credit attached to it. So that's it. Open up the question.
So that was the feedback based upon the strategic plan. So again, our principals are here, counseling directors and teachers. I'm sure you have some questions, and they'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
The data on study halls, does that include like releases in that data for study halls?
So the study hall data broken down by grade level.
Yeah.
And this is frozen, Christine. I'm not sure if I, oh, there we go. The mouse got me again. I'm gonna have a nightmare about this little mouse tonight. So this is the data that you're speaking about, and what this is from this year, and any student who's taking at least one. So people aren't counted twice, because there's many of our seniors that take a release and a study hall. So anybody that has one of their 8 class periods where it's not an academic class.
Okay, thank you. And for the school profile, if this change were implemented, for example, when this year's sophomores are applying to college, would it include information not just like, oh, their senior year only 7 courses were available, but also their freshman and sophomore year 8 courses were available? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my biggest concern is there is a little bit of student data here. Could you go back to the data? But it is particularly the data, yes, this one. Yeah. It's definite, I mean, it's a couple years old, and it also doesn't represent all of the students. So it represents about 1,500 students. We have, what, about 4,000 high school students-ish. 38%, not a bad return. But as I think about our clients, right, our clients are our students, I really feel like we need to hear more from their voice. As I've been going around, and not just the high school students, right? It's the high school students, but it's also the middle school students. I was at Henley for a candidate forum, and this was the #1 question they were asking me, kind of about choice. And so I think that's one of the things I really wonder. Is there a way, I know we're on a tight timeline, but how can we make sure we get enough information from our direct clients, our students, and what they really think? And I know you can look at how they're choosing study hall, right? You can look at how they're choosing courses, but the #1 thing, and this is anecdotal data, right? It's not actual survey data, but this is something, because my daughter's at Albemarle, and the students hear about this. This is something they've really been asking, like, what does it mean for electives? Like, yes, we want, I mean, it's a hard decision, right? Yes, we want more enrichment, but we also want more choice. We want to be able to take some of those electives and not just those core courses, because those, as my daughter said to me tonight, she said, those are the fun courses that I love. And this might mean that I might not be able to do that. So I think that's, like, as we go forward with this, that's the question I have, is like, is there an easy, efficient, not expensive way to get more feedback from students, high school as well as some of the middle school? I don't know if it's possible, but that would make me feel better, as well as parents, but I definitely thank the students themselves.
Okay, I have a question related to something Ms. Glover said about the comment that had been made during public comment. What are we doing, or how will this program, what's happening to sort of address that issue on electives, whether or not electives will be affected, and how we can prevent maybe what the public comment person was saying in regards to elective? Is that question sort of clear?
Got a shy group tonight, Graham. So when you go through, I think we answer that a couple ways, right? When we're analyzing this and looking at the number of, again, the question was asked, how many kids aren't taking advantage of it right now, this current year? And I think that's what we're looking at right here. So in the freshman year, nothing would be affected, right? Because the freshman seminar would be moved out, you'd still be taking 7. When you look at your senior year, very few kids would be affected. And I'm sure a number of those kids, the counseling directors would tell you, are kids that need that for a graduation requirement. Again, look at Western numbers, 63, 74, 88% sophomore, junior, senior year. The kids are elected to take at least one study hall. All right, well, again, that's a choice, that's fine. The other piece of data, Jennifer had it in here somewhere, right, where I'm sorry, I don't want to keep filling all the slides, but the number of opportunities that we have for other classes to be offered and what we're doing, it's there, right? So during that intervention, so if the board chose in December to move toward the 7 versus the 8, what we need to start doing is planning what would be in that 8th period. So enrichment and intervention is definitely a key. Right now, I think you've heard from the group that Patriot period, Mustang morning, the Warrior time is muddied with a lot of other things. And so that's not consistent time. So in a 7 academic schedule, that would be consistent. And then you would have this other opportunity. So could there be more opportunities to increase the online classes? That's one of the reasons that Jennifer talked about the kids that are enrolled in virtual classes now, either on their own through classes that you know, for whatever reason they take, or some of these that we offer again during the year and in the summer, the personal finance, the health and PEs. Is there opportunities to expand upon those, add things? So what would the opportunities to be to find that win-win? That's what we'd have to discuss next. If we don't go to if it's not a move to the 8th period, then, you know, so we haven't delved into the weeds with that. But as you heard some folks talking about the schedule, what works in the schedule, what doesn't, those are some of the things we kind of talked about. How would you re-envision seminar during that that intervention enrichment time? So it's the kids would still have 7 academic classes, so it wouldn't change that in the freshman year. Does that help a little bit, Graham?
A little, but I was thinking more about the electives, like say art or something like that.
Right. I think that's where you'd have to come back to here. So right. I mean, at looking at the number of kids who aren't taking any class right now during that time, right? So could classes be affected during that time? Maybe, right? I mean, it depends on what the kids are taking. When you look through the sophomore year, you see the 30%, 12%, and then 63% for Western. That would probably be the biggest year that something could possibly be affected. But then is there the opportunity to build something in during those other times I'm talking about for a child that really wants to do something, that's on track to graduate, that wanted to take another opportunity? So there's ways to be able to do that as well.
So Jay, what I'm hearing you say is that if I'm a student right now, but just anecdotally, both of my children took study hall every year, and they still graduated with, I mean, they when they went to high school, they each had 3 credits for high school. Most of our students, almost all of our students, go to high school with 1 credit, and many go with 2. So they're already ahead of it, and then they get to high school. They take study hall every year. Our experience in our house was just they couldn't manage taking that many classes. They couldn't juggle it. So what would happen then is they would not have, one of the classes options would be removed. They would be guaranteed a lengthy period of time every other day when they could use as a study hall, or they could use for other choice opportunities if they wanted to, and see all of their teachers to get extra time and support. Unlike these study halls where they just sit in an auditorium, usually being supervised by TAs, they're just there. It's kind of like a holding tank, or they check out.
That's right.
They check out and leave the building. So what would happen then is they would actually be pushed to take a class because they wouldn't have the place for the study hall. So in other words, then elective enrollment would actually go up because right now they're bypassing taking electives to take a study hall. The other piece, I mean, that's what I was hearing you say.
Well, and I think we can offer opportunities too, when we start looking at the virtual classes we offer or the other opportunities.
Right.
Is there something that we can even build in?
Well, we would have to change our unwritten rule of where we say, if a course is offered at a school, you can't take it online. I thought we did away with that many years ago, but apparently it's,
We do, they can't add it to our transcript.
okay.
And so if it's a graduation requirement, then they can't do that.
Right, but they could take it as a precursor, and certainly when they apply to go to college, if that's what they're going to do, then they can talk about that
They
in
can
their
submit that transcript
application.
separately.
So they could have the course. The other piece is that, I've only attended a couple of these meetings, but at the last meeting, I think it was really well, Mr. Poindexter really articulated a concern for his students, and the concern that he had was that he would have a tough time maintaining a pipeline into all the way through his course, that the students could take all the courses they wanted to, and he could build it from the base up. And because right now, what it's all built on is 6 classes. And what I explained to him, and this kind of goes back in time before many people worked in the school system, you actually used to get paid for an extra class. So I explained to him that if you truly are an electives teacher that has built your structure on 6 classes, we're still going to need you to do that. And back in the day, when we needed to fill the schedule, we would talk to a teacher and see if they wanted to do an extra class, and they got paid 20% of their pay to take that on, as opposed to how we're doing it now, where the teachers routinely teach 6 classes and it's not factored in. And when he heard that, as someone who's truly, his whole career is based on an elective, he was very satisfied. In fact, he said, I'm looking forward to getting that, because he really carries quite a load of kids. So those are the things I think about with making sure we don't disadvantage our electives teachers, because if they build up their elective, we want to make sure that the structures are in place for them to keep doing that and maintain the pipeline.
Absolutely.
Especially with the new art classes.
Well, I was just going to say, hence
Right.
we're offering new elective classes.
Yeah, the art classes, as you know, as well as I know, from my experience with kids, it's interesting in 9th grade, 10th grade, a lot of students just get placed in an art class because you're trying to make their schedule work. And when they need to do that, when they need to take the elective, right, instead of making their schedule work by popping them in the study hall, which then they're going to be sitting in the auditorium or trying to go out and walk around the track, it's like, okay, you need to take this elective because we don't have a place to put you, take the elective. We find out that it's good for them, and it's good for their mental health to take an elective. It's better for them to do that than it is to just sit somewhere, sit in the library on their phone. And so as opposed to just saying, well, we've got this 8-period schedule, it's okay that 80-some% of our seniors are taking 2 study halls and leaving the building. What we're saying is we're going to reduce the bandwidth so that you need to get into a class, and basically all the taxpayer investment that goes into our school system is utilized rather than just having students counted as enrolled but then not really being engaged.
I'm struck by the history of the 8-period schedule having been made completely devoid of any academic reasoning, and it was totally a budgetary decision that was made with little study or notice, and that it basically cost-shifted the budget burden to the teachers. And everything I have heard from any of the few letters or comments that we have received has been an unintended benefit was perhaps a flourishing of some electives that many, but certainly not even close to all students, take advantage of. I was struck by, and I forget, I'm sorry, don't remember who said it, but was talking about, I think it was our first speaker, talking about academically, our students have not flourished under this system, basically, and that there's no increase in the numbers of advanced degrees. That's been pretty flat. And I mean, I don't think we should live with a bad decision. We should maybe try to figure out how to accommodate some of the benefits that threw off. But this was not a decision made for the benefit of our kids unless it was to keep the doors open because we had to balance our budget.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we don't save any money on this. In fact, the same year, and just so you, I know, yeah, I just want to make sure we clarify things. It was anticipated we would save $800,000 a year.
In the way back time?
Yeah, well,
yeah.
And what happened was we, through ERA funding, we had 17 positions that we put back in the budget. And then we quickly started turning around, dumping them back out into the high schools and middle schools to cover the increased student loads that the teachers had based on the numbers of kids.
So it was done for budgetary reasons, but they didn't ever materialize.
It didn't materialize because it was, that was one thing I think everybody was trying to hang their hat on was, well, it's saving money, but when I went to finance staff to talk to them about it, and then a year after that, and a year after that, it doesn't save money.
Well, the flip side of that will be a question about the budgetary impact of going to the 7
right.
schedule.
So to make it cost neutral, and this was a conversation, and it's something that we need to keep talking about, is that it's just the math of right now, I've got a number of students, and I've got 6 classes with them. So if I've got 120 students, that's 20 per class, which isn't way off for high school class sizes right now. We really have historically low high school class sizes. Then what will happen is if you knock that down to 5, then it's going to be more like 24 students per class. And so it's a trade-off between, so you'd have about the same number of students. It would just be a few more in each class that you have. But for the teacher, then it's one less performance of the class, and the classes can be longer. As Ms. Karpovich pointed out, the math, when people are coming in and explaining, this is the math, right? Right now, I've got 5 class periods that are each this long. When I have 6, they're going to be this long. Right. And I think that's one of the consequences as well. And your point about making a decision, so we had to back into it and started doing all the research after it was done. And the experts that we had come in, like Mike Rettig, who's like the international scheduling guru, he said, you all did what? You're doing something to save money? That's the worst reason to do it. It was really quite a time, I can say that.
Okay, I have one other question or two, or really comment. I think somebody said that we were trying to get 70% teacher approval or support with this. What will you be doing to try to receive input from as many teachers as possible? Like if we have, almost 1,500 teachers, roughly?
But for secondary.
Not in high school.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yes.
So are we going to try to survey everybody to make sure we are getting information from all of our teachers on this? The more input we would have, I think, the better we would have.
Jay and I, just in our conversations, we've asked the high school principals to have one-on-one conversations with their staff.
Okay.
So it's not a survey. It's like, let's talk about this. What questions do you have? And don't use a survey. Just like really have a conversation about it and see if people support it.
Okay. All right, and you think that would be giving really valid input? You don't think that somebody would be afraid to say something at that point?
I don't think so. I mean, we've done that before. Like I remember, because we've had these other conversations around, like for example, when we stopped ranking our students, right? And there was another issue where the principals went out and did that conversation, and it wasn't 100%. So, I mean, people vocalize their issues with whatever it is, and we take that seriously.
Okay.
And I'd like to think that we could address the issues that are raised. They're valid issues. They really are. It's just a question of being creative and coming up with solutions for the teachers, and actually, to me, financially rewarding teachers that take on more rather than expecting everybody to take on more and then not rewarding anybody. But I promise you that, the principals that we have would take it seriously and talk with their staff and try to get it situated. And if it's overwhelmingly that they don't want to do it, that's why we're still here with this, because it was 50-50. And all I wanted to do, it's not really like a hill to die on. I just feel like it deserved more attention than what we had given it before we came to the board to say we're not going to pursue it.
So I have a lot of comments and one question, but I think one thing, based on what you're saying, Graham, and what we have talked about, we hear a lot about the electives, we're thinking a lot about the electives. I think part of the problem, the cognitive dissonance that I'm having with the data that we have, is that we're trying to triangulate the electives around study halls. So we're giving data around study halls, and I can sort of come back and more pattern my eyes and see how that affects electives. And I know that I had asked for the elective data, and it's hard to come by, I guess. So I just want to name that and just say that, when we're having these conversations, it's hard for us because we're having to triangulate data. And I don't know if there is a fourth point that makes these 3 points a certain thing. So that is, I still have that sort of underlying dissonance. So that's the first thing about that. Ms. Glover, I think you had talked about the difficulty of saying the teacher perspective. Here is the broad teacher perspective. And you mentioned the range. And I just was curious from anyone in the group how that range was come to, what percentage of teachers you've talked to, or how representative you feel you understand teachers' perspectives.
Sure, I can speak to that a little bit. Prior to being a teacher at the high school, I was an instructional coach for 5 years. And in those 5 years, that's where I started to even learn this had ever happened. Mm-hmm. So that is one perspective that I've been hearing for a very long time. Before this was even on the table, every year high school teachers would say, I wish we could go back to, it was so much better when. So that's sort of like a historical feeling from some of our veteran teachers. As far as how the other data was come by, I've been in conversations with people who volunteered to be on the committee. So obviously that's a very certain set of people who are highly invested and have opinions about it. I've also been in conversation with the English department at Albemarle High School. Again, just one little slice of the pie, but with varied perspectives on the schedule. I was just sitting in a grading policy meeting next to a choral director at my high school, and she was giving me that elective perspective, which was shared by the Monticello band director. So we talk to each other a lot, and we love to talk about this kind of thing if we know it's going to be impacting us. I can't say that I have a comprehensive understanding of every teacher at every high school, but I have heard in those conversations in our committee meetings that have been at the Center 1 professional development space, teachers at Monticello, at Community Lab, at Center 1, at all the high schools, comprehensive and more niche, are reporting these same kinds of conversations that they have had with people at their schools. So the things I presented are sort of a consolidation of all of that anecdotal information I've heard in my own personal conversations, but also reported by teachers who have had those conversations at their different schools. That's how I would answer that question. If there's something else you'd want to know, perhaps someone else in the panel can tell you.
If anyone else wants to speak to that.
I just wanted to add to that, echo what Shannon said, and I would also add that, part of being on this task force was to go back and talk with the staff on a pretty regular basis. And so, we've presented information at faculty meetings, we've presented in PLCs, we've done that different kind of work. And so I feel, speaking from the Monticello perspective, I feel that I understand where a lot of questions have come up, where concerns have come up, kind of what teachers are feeling about different things. I think each of us kind of does in our varying places, and then again through our DPLCs. But it is not 100% of every voice heard yet.
I was just going to add, again, being one of the dinosaurs that's been around in the division for a long time, I remember when I used to carry a student load that was a maximum of 100. Every year now, my minimum number is 144. I'm also one of those teachers that's blessed with an open classroom that gets to co-teach. So I actually have 205 students this year. That's a lot of students. I remember what it was like, and I know what my relationships with my students were like when I taught 100 versus 205. I'd like to get some of that back. I'd like to get back to real relationships with my students, time in the schedule to actually help kids that need help. That's what I want to see. I would love to have something more than 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes 4 times a week to be able to work with kids who need extra intervention. I would like to get back to a time where I don't have to come into the building early to try to do that intervention time, or to use my lunch period every day to do that intervention time. I can't do all of the intervention that I need to do with the students that need me in that 30 minutes a day. So if we're gonna have an 8-period schedule, I'd like to see us go back to teachers teaching 5 out of 7, and one of those be a dedicated intervention and enrichment period, so that I can get back the ability to have lunch and not to have to be at the school building an hour early every day so that I can help my students. I teach in the science department. I can tell you that every single member of my science department is on board with going back to 5 out of 7. And most of them, all they've ever known is 6 out of 8. You know, they just get to hear the good old days stories from the old veterans like me that have been around and remember what it was like to only have a student load of 100. So I'd like to get back there as close as possible.
Also, I will say, as a parent of a near high schooler, I find very attractive the idea of more of that intervention time, of more of that dedicated time. Although I am curious, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on that, if you're a teacher, so all the kids would have a teacher during that period, right? So then kids would be coming in and out of classrooms, or I guess I'm not sure about that.
And that's been our fun conversation, right? So kind of separating the two is what we're trying to do. 7 versus 8, and then what does that schedule look like? And so one of the things this group has been doing is taking back, and you heard somebody say, every time we came back, we had a new schedule idea. So we've put a bunch of schedules out in front of them, a lot of them that we use with Dr. Redding, who came and worked with us, as Dr. Haas was talking about, and just shared, hey, here's what things were shared with us on the past. How would you tweak it? What are the pros of it? What are the disadvantages of it? How do you make those disadvantages or questions you have advantages? And based on that, we've had some pretty creative feedback. In fact, the October meeting, I think we went over our meeting time by about an hour because some folks brought a schedule that then started warping into something else that turned into something that looked pretty decent at the end. So I don't want to say this is what the schedules look like, because I think the next step is, well, there's a lot of steps, right? You either say, yeah, we need to delay this and talk about it more, or yes, we're going through it, or no, we're not, right? And at the December meeting, and then if hypothetically the answer was yes, let's move to this in December, that's the next task, is get this group back together, other folks, and start putting those schedules and say, how do you mitigate some of the things that you're concerned about? So we do have some data pieces. You could always get more data pieces. But and trying to make that work. So ideally, right, there would be, if you just ran a hypothetical schedule like we do now, an A day, B day schedule, 4 on one day, 4 on the next, one of those 4, right, on, let's just hypothetically say B day, could be that intervention, enrichment, club time, flex time, seminar time, all that stuff that's eating into that intervention time that they have now. It could also be a time, as I believe Shannon was talking about with teachers, a more dedicated time to get to a PLC. Several teachers have 2 and 3 PLCs they're trying to get to. So just trying to organize that time better, which reduces some of the stress and things on the teachers and on the kids, allows the teachers, as Michelle just talked about, to work with the kids more. So that's what we're exploring with the school board goal.
Also, I noted on, I think it was the goals or underlying assumptions, or I'm not sure which one. But it talked about using the anti-racism, anti-bias decision tool, and I was just curious about how that was used.
Yeah, so here, this is, one of the things that the group did in the first meetings is instead of developing norms, we actually developed operating principles. And so we said, as we're having conversations about the benefit of 7 versus 8, a benefit of a schedule versus another schedule, we need to have some operating principles to go by. So the group that you see here, in addition to the other 15 or 20 people that were coming, developed these operating principles, and then they actually took those back. They were tasked with taking them back to their staff, and I think they had 2 to 3 weeks, and staff there could give input. We tweaked it, and then all the conversations that we've had from that point on, we've pulled these 5 bullets out and said, would this schedule work or not work based upon the operating principles we developed? So that's how we use that.
So you're saying between 7+1 schedules, not between 7+1 and 8?
Well, if you go back up, I mean, what we were tasked with was looking at the board perspective, or right here, that's strategy number 3, investigate the value of implementing a 7-period academic. So yes, we did it against the 7 academic period, because that's what we were tasked with looking at as far as the school board priority or goal strategy.
Okay, so, but that's just investigating the value of, and that typically, I would guess, would be comparing that to the value of the current schedule, right? That would be in comparison.
That's right. Now, the office, and Patrick might be able to speak about this a little better. I know the Office of Strategic Planning has put out multiple surveys to families, to teachers, to kids over the last couple of years, and that's a lot of the questions they were asking. What is it that you want in a schedule? Hence why we put these slides up here. What's important to you in a schedule, not important? What do you want to get accomplished during the day? So we used that data as we were kind of putting things together. Does that answer what you're asking?
My initial question was, how was the anti-racism, anti-bias decision tool used in this? And maybe someone else can speak to that.
Yeah.
I mean, in what ways was it used? Or are we still using it? Are we waiting? I see it there. I just wonder how it was used. But so this is only for the 7+1.
That's how we were using all 5 of these bullets. As we talked about a different schedule, would that schedule fall in line with the operating principles?
Okay.
And that was one of the operating principles.
And then on another slide, it said it would try to address consequences for parents and students.
I'm not sure.
I think it was on the some considerations.
Some
on
considerations.
If you go back to the considerations slide, right there. So one of the things that we said was we would look at potential consequences to teachers and students.
Oh, teachers and students. Okay. I guess for me, thinking this through, and I think there are a lot of compelling reasons to do this. I know that a version of us did this quickly, and without a lot of this work that you all have done. And so I just want to ensure that, we don't put ourselves in a similar situation, I guess.
Absolutely, and that's why we didn't bring it here to be voted on today. And we have been talking about this for several years. There's been multiple groups that have gone out and gotten feedback, and as Dr. Haas said earlier, several times it's come back 50-50, right? Which is hard. And a number of the 50% that were like, I don't want to move to, were like, but I want to know what that schedule is going to look like before I even had a say, which is hard. And so that's what we've done. So that's where Dr. Haas went out and I went out and spoke to all the faculties again, just as he said, to give it one last go. Like, this is part of our strategic plan. Is this going to work? Is it not going to work? If it is going to work, we were tasking teachers to help us put this together. So they had a voice in putting this together. And so that's what we are. That's what we're presenting. It really is from that group that's been going back and getting feedback. So yes, so we talked about the consequences and for both the teacher and the student, absolutely. And I think that's what we're sharing some examples for. How do you mitigate those? If you were to go to the schedule is what our next task would be if we went to that. So that's why we wanted to put it out, allow people that have had a chance to hear it or haven't had a chance to hear it, to have a say and give some voice so that you guys can determine, is this a, hold on, this is good, but let's keep talking about it. And that's why we actually had the counseling directors talk about the timeline. Because if we don't make a decision in December, then we're going to strongly recommend that we continue to wait, because they are going to be scheduling, and then that's just going to be a little bit more difficult. If the choice is to stay with what we got now, we're fine, we're on track. If it's to go to 7, they're fine and they're on track with that. But if it's after December, it's going to be a lot harder for them to schedule, and that's why they put that scheduling timeline up. So yes, we absolutely want input, and we've heard input both ways. So that's what makes it fun and difficult, right?
Certainly. Any other thoughts or questions?
Well, I'll repeat myself. I mean, well, first of all, I'm really impressed with the range of stakeholders that you have in this process, and having you all come and make the presentations has been quite powerful. But I go back to, I don't see the advantage of having switched to the 8 for the vast majority of our students or our teachers. Having longer classes and more in depth, and having the opportunity to know your students better, which is one of our key goals in our strategic plan, I think is very persuasive. But I do hear you, Jay, about the time is of the essence if we're going to make a jump this year. And I agree with Chair Lee that we don't want to make a precipitous jump like they did, 20 years ago. But I am concerned, about the undue burden to our my father was a teacher. And there was always too much work. But I appreciate all the time you all have spent.
So I would like to have, I think one possibility had been to put this on consent for next time, but I would like to have this be just a discussion, a final discussion next time as an agenda item, so that we can just hash this out, because I just, again, don't want to.
I would like more student input too.
Yeah.
But if it's on consent, we can't make a vote before the holiday, right?
What do you mean?
No,
I mean,
we could.
If it's on consent next week for discussion.
We've already discussed it.
We discussed it once, so we could vote.
It would be on for action, for consent.
It would be on for, okay.
But I think we should do it for action as an item, agenda
On December
item.
14th?
On December 14th.
Okay.
So.
I have one clarifying question before we move on. I don't know if I'm not understanding how this would be implemented, but if this intervention block would be, like you said, on B days, how would that impact teachers that are part-time and would only be coming in on, for example, A days?
So that would depend on how they're part-time, right? So if they work on A days, it doesn't affect them if they come in on B days. So the principles, is they build the master schedule, depending on when somebody's part-time, they build the master schedule around whatever you are. So if you're a 0.5, and this current schedule means you'd be teaching 3 classes, so they'd have to build that in. So if I were to hire Dr. Hawes as an English teacher, he might say, hey, I'm interested in working mornings only, and so I schedule him in the mornings, or he works evenings only, or afternoons only, or every other day. So it just would fall in the schedule, however, as far as a part-time schedule.
So would they still have access to be able to work with students during that enrichment period?
Depending on how the master schedule is set up at the school, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for all the time that you've put into this and presenting. And also I could tell the teachers when you're presenting, it's good vibe. So thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
This is your 9th period, right?
Okay. Next
Thank
we'll
you
move
all.
to our legislative agenda.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Cabinet. I'm Helen Dunn, Deputy Public Affairs and Strategic Communications Officer for the school division. And let me pull this up. All right. All right, so just presenting to you, that's too much, Helen. Presenting the 2024 proposed legislative agenda. And before I do that, as you know, strategic plan, our vision, our learners are engaged in authentic, challenging, and relevant learning experiences, becoming lifelong contributors and leaders in our dynamic and diverse society. Our mission is working together as a team. We will end the predictive value of race, class, gender, and special capacities for our children's success through high-quality teaching and learning for all. We seek to build relationships with families and communities to ensure that every student succeeds. We will know every student. And I think you'll see that woven throughout this legislative agenda, that these items do directly address much of that strategic plan. So tonight, as every year, our purpose and goals are to articulate your legislative priorities and positions on key policy issues to state legislators. And I hope just to receive input from you all and direction for you all as we move forward with this agenda. So tonight is information, and the next steps will be meetings with legislators. As you all know, we just had an election on Tuesday, and so we will start whittling down a date for that, but we'll have that soon after our December meeting once this legislative agenda is approved. It's important just to note that we actually don't know committee assignments yet, as we have seen a bit of a change in the makeup of the State House and Senate. So we will have now, as the education committees and subcommittees always have chairs who are a member of the leading party. So that would mean a significant change in the House, which was Republican-led and now will be Democratic-led. So we'll see kind of what that leadership for education committees and subcommittees looks like. A couple of other key dates. I think importantly, pre-filing begins on the 20th. The governor presents his budget bills on December 20th. So that's going to really kind of set the ball in motion for what budget bills will be potentially proposed in General Assembly in January. Session convenes the second Wednesday of every January, so that'll be January 10th of this year. There's no bill limit this year for legislators because it's a long session. They actually can propose as many bills as they'd like. A couple of other key dates that I think are especially of note. The effective date of enacted legislation is on Monday, July 1st. As every year, that's July 1st. Crossover this year, by the way, is February 13th. That's when bills exchange chambers to be viewed by the opposite chamber than what proposed it. This year, I've kind of approached this agenda a little bit differently. So you already know, I think, that the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee did 2 reports, as they were directed to do by General Assembly in 2022, last year. So one of those was on the K-12 funding formula. The second was on the teacher pipeline. And so I've really approached this agenda with that in mind, honoring what they found through the results, the outcomes of those reports and their recommendations. The third item will be school division and local authority. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So first off, that K-12 funding. The standards and all of you up here I know understand this, but the standards of quality, or SOQ, is how the General Assembly fulfills its constitutional obligation to seek to establish and maintain a high-quality public education in the Commonwealth. So that formula estimates how many staff positions are needed for each school division, and then it applies cost assumptions accordingly to estimate the cost of staff needed in each school division in Virginia. Then that formula, the cost is then basically apportioned between the state and locality based on the local composite index, or LCI. So just a little bit of a reminder maybe for those who didn't already understand how that worked. Really important things showed up in the K-12 funding report that came out from JLARC this year. So first off, Virginia's K-12 contributions are in the bottom half nationally. Kind of depends on the benchmark, but Virginia school divisions were estimated to need between 6% and 30% more funding, depending on how that was reported. So between 73 and 89% of the state's school divisions receive funding that's below benchmarks, depending, again, on the model and assumptions used. But that is to say that funding in the state of Virginia is well below where it could be, where we think it should be. Beyond that, the SOQ formula is actually intended to calculate the funds needed to provide a high-quality education, but it's well below division expenditures across the state. So that's something that is being seen consistently throughout Virginia. Additionally, total staffing needs have been underestimated. So one of the reasons that the SOQ formula's funding calculations are below actual practice and benchmarks is that the formula substantially underestimates K-12 staffing. For example, in fiscal year 2021, the SOQ calculated that divisions needed around 113,000 full-time employees. So that's, instructional, student support, and administrative functions. But in actuality, 171,000 were employed. So that's 51-ish% more than was estimated. It's a big difference, of course. Additionally, the historic decline in state revenue during the Great Recession led to a series of changes to the SOQ formula that reduced funding. We've talked about this every year that I've been in the role of doing legislative work for the school division. But that was in 2008, and many of those changes remain in place well over a decade later, as of June of 2023. So you can imagine that's something that school division lobbyists and other interested parties have been working to change for many years since then. Additionally, an effective SOQ formula should account for the higher cost. Okay. Everyone's better at using the mic than I am. I don't know why. So an effective SOQ formula should account for higher costs division incur because of factors such as an increased cost for educating special needs students. That's another finding that the report came out with. It's exemplified by the fact that over the last 10 years, state funding has increased per student for at-risk students and English learners, but has actually decreased for special education students. And we have a fairly large proportion of high-need students in the school division. So you can imagine that that's something that we will be definitely advocating for as General Assembly begins. Additionally, the formula doesn't adequately account for local labor costs. So the Virginia SOQ formula does attempt to account for higher labor costs in some divisions, namely in Northern Virginia, but it actually excludes school divisions in higher cost labor markets like ours. So we don't actually get that cost to compete adjustment that Northern Virginia gets. So it's something that I think we, really need to look into. The JLARC report, again, has affirmed that that's something that's problematic for us, that we're receiving less funding in basically a high cost of living area of the state. Moving on to that teacher pipeline piece. So again, this really supports that JLARC study in the teacher pipeline. So waivers, I've proposed that we support recommendation 3 from that JLARC study, that General Assembly may wish to consider amending Code of Virginia to create a waiver through which licensed individuals attending approved higher education teacher prep programs who have not passed the Virginia Communication and Literacy Assessment but still meet established criteria are given a waiver to teach. Over the last 6 years, about 14% of teachers did not pass that test, and it's actually a Virginia-specific test. So the idea is that that's an unnecessary barrier that could be removed and just make recruitment slightly easier. Further to that, teaching scholarships. This is the Virginia Teaching Scholarship Loan Program. The VTSLP awards up to $10,000 for tuition and fees to teacher candidates at public or private institutions who are pursuing teaching in critical shortage disciplines or who are minority teacher candidates. So that program requires that recipients teach at least 2 years in a critical shortage discipline or in a school where more than half of the students are eligible for free or reduced lunch. So you can imagine how that would be a meaningful recruitment tool for this school division or for any school division in the state. Higher education prep programs are reporting that despite the number of people interested in that, there's not nearly enough funding to cover the interested parties. So that's something I think that we could really advocate for as well, just more money for those scholarships that will keep people going into teacher prep programs and keep them teaching after they finish. And finally, licensure requirements are apparently complex. To many, it's difficult for people to understand those. So particularly with regard to reciprocity, licensed teachers, endorsed teachers who come in from other states find it very difficult to navigate the ways through which they can begin a reciprocity process or simply just begin teaching in the state of Virginia without having to submit a full application. So these are, again, things that JLARC report found that I think it would be in our best interest to advocate for, and that a lot of legislative liaisons across the state will be lobbying for as well through upcoming session. Finally, just 2 items that address school division and local authority. Our colleagues in Building Services actually asked me to include something that would request pre-approval of easements for any of your approved capital improvement projects. So whenever you approve a project, any required easements that would be related to that would be pre-approved. The idea being obviously that that would expedite work on capital improvement projects. This is similar to something that local government has already achieved through a resolution that would just simplify things, expedite processes, and make us better at getting our jobs done. And finally, one of the consequences of all of this underfunding is that local governments have had to step up and add a lot of funding, as you know better than almost anyone, to support schools. That means that there's a gap in funding for things like capital improvement projects. And I know a couple of you have spent a lot of time worrying about this and working on this. So the idea here is that if there's not going to be local money left to achieve some of the capital improvement needs that we have, then naturally we would ask the state to fill in that gap accordingly. Or they could expand some of the dedicated local sales and tax authorities that were given to select counties back in 2019. Halifax was among those. I know you all heard a good bit about it. For the last 2 sessions, a lot of our local delegation has advocated for those. To some extent unsuccessfully, but we would hope that minds might open up a little bit more to that and give us the freedom to do what we know we need to do as a locality to do what's best for our students. So next, I would just hand it over to you all to ask any questions you may have.
Questions or comments?
Hi, Helen. Are we coordinating with the Board of Supervisors when they're scheduling their legislative meeting as well?
We have not coordinated with them for this year. That's something I'd happily look into doing if you'd like.
It just may be easier to snag if the legislators can come on the same day.
Absolutely.
But just a thought.
I'm happy to do that. And certainly speak with Claudette about that.
I can work with Claudette.
Great.
You and I.
Sure.
All right, I have a question about the waivers.
Mm-hmm.
Are there certain subject matters that would help us with more so than others?
That's a great question in terms of data specific to our school division. I don't know that there's specific subjects where that would be particularly useful at ACPS. I'd happily find that out for you. I do know that HR suggested that this is something that would be really beneficial to us in a larger sense.
Okay.
So,
thanks.
yeah.
how do these legislative priorities align with VSBA's legislative agenda or Charlottesville's or neighboring school divisions?
Yeah, so VSBA, I can say, has adopted similarly a lot of what came out of those JLARC reports. I think a lot of people are kind of attaching themselves to that because these were General Assembly directed reports by JLARC. So, you know, that's something, that's a joint review. It's not done, it's not a partisan type review. So this is something that when General Assembly does that, it comes out afterwards with a hope for code to be changed accordingly. So a lot of people across the Commonwealth are going to be advocating based on these reports, just like we would be. So I should say VSBA, VAS, Virginia Association of School Secondary Principals, Elementary Principals, they all intend to have similar items on their agendas. Fairfax.
Just as I love kind of the three buckets, but just because that last bullet about, you know, building funding is such a huge one, it's something we've been focusing on so much, like, I hate to have it like, you know, whatever's last sometimes gets forgotten. And so just as we think about how we presented, and I love how you kind of presented things last year, almost like thinking about like, is there a way to tie that up to the, you know, the JLARC and the K-12 funding, or just highlight that? Because, I mean, I think as we, you know, consider kind of what we need to do going forward from the conversations we've had the last two meetings, that is such a huge piece of the current board. And I also think, you know, our previous delegates have been focused on it, but I definitely think, knowing that we have kind of two delegates who have been on this school board and the city school board, as Reeves create, like, that is at the front of their mind, and anything we can do to kind of put that at the top of their mind, and then think about what, like, one or two graphs we can give them to really show that that need going forward.
Absolutely. So I would just mention that the order that these go in on the legislative agenda has no bearing on how we kind of pursue it with our legislators. And I take my direction from you all. So when you all have a few sort of asterisks beside things, those are the ones that become my top priority when I work with legislators moving forward. So there's now an asterisk. Don't worry.
I would say also that I've heard from a couple of the supervisors who are included this taxing authority in the county's ask. So to the degree that we can parallel that language and work together, that would be great.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do work a great deal with David Blunt from the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. So we actually coordinate in Richmond frequently when we're at General Assembly. So we've worked together a good bit.
But I would have to agree with Dr. Berlin that maybe once we point out why we're underfunded, and then we do the funding, and then we do the teacher pipeline.
Sure. Yeah, I can tweak the order of that, no problem. Absolutely.
I also want to note that from the JLARC study, I know that we're 51% more staffed than we are funded as a Commonwealth, but my understanding from just the years that I've been on the board is that we fund more than the average. So we would be even higher than that, or more underfunded than that.
It's one of the great paradoxes of that local composite index. Yep.
And so, and you mentioned that tonight we have this for information, and then what action do you need from us?
Approval when you're ready.
Tonight?
Yes. I think procedurally, would that need to wait?
Well, I thought we had it on information before.
You did have it for information on the October 26th meeting, and then she presented tonight, so you can approve tonight if you deem so.
Let's do it.
Are people ready? All right, can I have a motion?
Sounds good. I move to approve the 2024 legislative agenda.
Second.
All right, moved by Dr. Berlin, seconded by Ms. Osborne. Can we do a voice vote for this?
You can do a voice vote, yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No one left? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you all. Thanks so much. come with me to Richmond in June.
absolutely.
Anytime.
Call me up.
Yeah,
Me too.
it's really powerful when you all are
Yeah,
there.
happy to.
It means a lot. Plus, I'm fun to go to Richmond with, so.
I bet you're super fun.
Plus, we can go visit,
Perfect.
we can go visit Katrina.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was
She should supply us
the first thing I
cookies and
said
stuff.
after I was.
All right, Katrina and Amy.
Okay, next we have a break. Does everyone want to take the break? I'm just kidding, we're having a break. Okay, so we'll be back at 9:12. Order. We have the FY24 budget update. Ms. Maya Kumazama.
Yep, I'm good. My name is Maya Kumazawa, Director of Budget and Planning, and the purpose of this presentation is to provide you with some updates as they relate to the current operating budget for FY24. I'm joined by my partners in Human Resources, Claudine Cloutier and Brody Downs, as they will provide specific updates on healthcare premiums and a mid-year pay increase proposal. And I'll also come back and provide a state revenue update at the end. The purpose of providing these budget updates is to ensure we meet our goal of equitable, transformative resources. In particular, these updates relate directly to Strategy 1 in that goal. ACPS will implement a total compensation structure that makes us highly competitive compared to other employers. And the reason why we're presenting these updates together is not only because all of them impact this year's operating budget, but also because of the impact to employees in the new calendar year. We're proposing to provide an unbudgeted pay increase of 2% for our hardworking employees, while also having to increase healthcare premiums in January. Also, if you have any questions, if you could save them for the end, we'll go through the slides pretty quickly. So I'll now turn it over to Ms. Cloutier to begin.
Good evening. I'm Claudine Cloutier, Benefit Program Manager, and I'll be speaking tonight about our medical plan and contribution increases for the 2024 plan year, which begins January 1st. As a reminder, we have a self-funded medical plan. This means that we don't pay an insurance company to take on the risk for our insured members. Instead, we take on our own risk and pay an insurance company, currently Anthem of Virginia, to administer our self-funded plan. With a self-funded plan, employee premiums and employer contributions go into our healthcare fund. As you can see from this illustration, employer contributions make up the lion's share of the fund. In the current plan year, this is approximately 72 to 96% of the funding costs, depending on plan and tier. This fund is used to pay claims when members seek medical care or purchase prescription medications. The fund also pays for Anthem's administrative fees, our stop-loss insurance premiums, and wellness initiatives like vaccine clinics. If contributions exceed expenses, the remainder goes into our strategic reserve. If expenses exceed contributions, we use our strategic reserves to pay for them. If you're not familiar with stop-loss coverage, it is basically an insurance policy for our fund. It caps the fund's liability to no more than $275,000 per member per year and is a vital component of maintaining the sustainability of the fund. This year has been a challenging one for healthcare costs, and our expenses are exceeding projections due to a combination of factors including the number of high-cost claimants, ever-increasing prescription drug costs, the impact of inflation on provider contract renewals, and a significant increase in our stop-loss premiums for the 2023 plan year. This slide illustrates the current plan year employer contributions for individual and family coverage on our two medical plan options, along with the budgeted and actual 2024 plan rates. As you can see, our plan experience this year necessitated an increase to the budgeted rates, and the last column reflects the actual increase from the 2023 plan year to the 2024 plan year. The anticipated budgetary impact is approximately $650,000 in increased expenditures, and this equates to employer contribution increases of approximately $21 to $298 per pay period, depending on plan, tier, and employee pay schedule. I would also like to call your attention to the employer HSA contribution. This is given to employees on our high-deductible medical plan. Next year will be the first time since the plan's inception in 2016 that we have increased the employer contribution amount. And also for the first time next year, we will make additional contributions for those who cover one or more dependents on the plan. On the employee side, I'm having bad luck like Helen. Okay. On the employee side, what's the best way to do this? This way? We don't know. It was working so well till I moved it, so I'm going to leave it right here and we'll try again. All right, on the employee side, the 2023 plan year was the first time since 2017 that we raised employee premium rates. We will need to raise them again for 2024. The impact on employees will be an increase of $2 to $40 per pay period. These increases will be effective as of January 1st. As you may be aware from the many Compass messages that have gone out since early October, if you get email here, you probably have seen them. We are currently in our open enrollment window, which began on November 1st. Our dedicated open enrollment information page has been available since October 15th, and postcard reminders were mailed to eligible employees at the end of October. Human Resources staff supports employees during this time by responding to emails and phone calls, along with offering in-person, phone, and virtual consultations. During Making Connections this week, we also offered presentations and walk-in open enrollment assistance labs where our employees could get help with questions or making their open enrollment elections in ADP. And these were very well attended. This concludes my portion of this presentation. Next, Brody Downs will present on the proposed mid-year pay increase.
Good evening. I'm Brody Downs, the Director of Employee Services in our Human Resources Department. I'm here to discuss a proposed mid-year salary adjustment as a result of funding recently made available by the state. The FY24 state budget includes a 2% increase for all SOQ instructional and support positions at the turn of the calendar year. As a result, Human Resources recommends implementing a 2% mid-year adjustment to staff salaries. However, the state does not require school divisions to pass along this funding to staff by way of a mid-year increase, as long as those school divisions' recent annual increases met certain thresholds as defined by the state over the past 2 years. The Albemarle County Public Schools increases over the prior 2 fiscal years has exceeded the state's required threshold. The anticipated impact to our budget this year would be $1.8 to $2 million to implement mid-year. Ms. Kumazawa will speak more in a moment on the overall impact this proposed increase would have on the school division. Providing this increase will only positively impact the school division's position amongst its peers within the competitive market, and we are aware of school divisions who have opted to implement a mid-year increase, but we're also aware of other school divisions who have opted not to. As a result of the proposal, we would increase teacher and bus driver step scales by 2%. And Human Resources would also increase the classified pay grade scales 2% as well to support our ongoing recruitment efforts. And looking ahead to additional work related to compensation, we will be revisiting this topic much more in depth over the coming months. The fall is, I'm sure you all are aware, a very busy time for our compensation team. At the December meeting, HR will provide further analysis following its annual competitive market survey process to include the impact of the recommended mid-year 2% increase. HR will also include its recommendation for staff increases for the FY25 budget preparation process as well. As with the healthcare changes, we do not recommend any action from the board at this time, but as we continue to manage the budget throughout the year, we may return for a budget amendment. And I'll now turn it over to Ms. Kumazawa to discuss the state budget update.
So I'll just wrap it up with more budget-related items. The Chapter 1 2023 Special Session General Assembly adopted budget was released last month, and this chart shows the impact of the changes when compared to our adopted FY24 operating budget. While there were some other minor changes, the significant areas include a compensation supplement increase, an increase in funding for support positions, and a decrease in enrollment, as we discussed on October 12th. The new budget adds about $400,000 to the compensation supplement for funded SOQ positions, about $900,000 to fund an additional 42 support positions. These increases are offset by a downward adjustment in our enrollment for the current year, which is below what we had originally budgeted. This is estimated to be an impact of about $1 million. This enrollment change impacts basic aid funding and many other state revenue line items that use enrollment in the formula. So I'm showing the net change of everything is about $400,000 in state revenues. Separately, we've been allocated about $2.4 million in all-in per pupil funding, which is one-time state per pupil funding for the implementation of the Virginia Literacy Act, learning loss, and to combat chronic absenteeism, but this will be discussed and appropriated at a later date. It's almost like this was planned, but this is what you all were talking about with Dr. Dunn about what ACPS looks like in relationship to what the SOQ funds. So this is specifically focused around the compensation supplement. The VDOE calculates the supplement using a lot of data, but there are three primary drivers for the formula, which are the number of funded positions, the assumed salaries of those positions, and our local composite index. Here are some examples. There are 1,045 SOQ-funded instructional positions, and we have about 1,398 teachers, principals, and assistant principals. You could look at this and infer that about 75% of our instructional positions are funded. Another example shown is that the prevailing salary that the state uses for an elementary school teacher is about $54,000, and our average K-12 teacher salary is about $68,000. In this aspect, 80% of salaries are funded. The largest driver, though, is our local composite index of 0.6387, which is relatively high compared to the state average of 0.3973. Our LCI means that the state picks up only 36% of the total cost that they calculate based on other assumptions. So when you combine all of these factors, for a 2% pay increase, for example, the state supplement is roughly about 20% of the total cost if we applied the pay increase to all of our employees. This evening, we're recommending the appropriation of recurring state revenues of an additional $412,042 to be used to offset some of the unbudgeted compensation increases as discussed by my HR colleagues. This item is recommended for action. Is there a motion to request this appropriation?
I'm happy to do it. I request the Board of Supervisors, well, I do want to, is there any discussion we want to have or comments? I mean, my only comment is, absolutely 100% support this, but I think, this is such an example of this information that we all know that comes out from the state that says we just gave a 2% pay raise to teachers, which they and support staff and all staff that they so deserve. Big asterisk, by the way, school district, you're going to have to pay out about, $1.5 million in additional money. And just all my time I've been out with constituents lately, the more we can continue to do kind of with Dr. Dunn in kind of raising this up with our legislators, but also just raising this up with our community to say, these are the things we want to do. We have to do the right things to support our teachers. However, kind of the information you hear in the public and through the news, it doesn't tell you the whole story. I'm so glad because, as I said to a couple people, first thing once I got elected, I literally turned to the person sitting next to me and said, okay, I'm excited. Now I need to figure out with the rest of the board how we're going to find this money. So thank you guys for figuring this out. And thank God we've had some flexibility and we have some reserve, but there is going to be a time that we might have to think twice because we're not going to be able to make up that $1.5 million difference. So that's what I wanted to say. Anyone else want to say something? But I will now say my motion. I request the Board of Supervisors I request the Board of Supervisors appropriate the state revenue funding as presented and amend the appropriations ordinance accordingly.
I second that motion.
Moved by Dr. Berlin, seconded by Dr. Acuff. We'll just do a voice vote on this. Or do we need a roll call? Okay, we'll do a voice vote. Does anyone have any other comments before we do the voice vote? Nope. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? No one's left? All right, motion carries.
I do have a question for them.
Okay.
How much will the 2% salary increase offset the increase in insurance costs on average? Do we giveth and taketh, I think, in the same. You probably already had it here, but.
It varies, right, depending on what plan you're on and what your rate of pay is. But, I mean, if you do $45,000 a year employee, going up 2%, it's $800. So you can see the $800 differentiation between 115, 486, 28, and 26. So that's very quick and dirty math, yeah.
And another question, I know that I haven't looked at the data in granular form in a few years. I know that one of the highest cost trajectories is prescription drug costs, and I know that the county has put out an RFP or is planning to in terms of a health center to try to bring in some of the drug costs. Do we know anything more? That's the A to Z of what I know about this. Is there any more information about that?
I'd say we're the very early stages of understanding. I know there's been a lot of work. I'm actually on the RFP, one of the members of the RFP committee. There's been a lot of legwork on the front end to really understand the fiscal impact, the return on investment when you do go down the endeavor of a clinic.
Right.
And that depends on what services you have that clinic provide. So part of the RFP process is to really understand what the varying services can be and what the individual costs of those services are.
Right.
And then at the end of the RFP process, we'll be able to make a decision as to whether or not it meets the need, if it's fiscally responsible, because part of the costs of such a clinic are generated from the healthcare reserve fund. So.
Right. I mean, I just know that we looked at it almost eight years ago, just about bringing the pharmaceutical piece out, not having a full-scale clinic, and trying to see if we could package that. But looks like the ambition is greater this time.
We're looking at it all. Yeah.
Okay.
Getting creative, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the State of the Division Report 2023. Dr. McLaughlin.
Good evening, everyone. So good evening, board members. I'm Pat McLaughlin, Assistant Superintendent for Strategic Planning, and I'm pleased to be with you tonight to give our annual State of the Division Report. The State of the Division Report is a look back at the work that we've completed during the 22-23 school year around our strategic plan, Learning for All. Last year was the second year of our plan, and tonight's report will provide an opportunity for us to start comparing data against our baseline year of 21-22. As always, we start by letting you know the strategic plan is guided by our vision and our mission, our values, and our strategic goals. Our three goals that we have in the division, thriving students, empowering communities, and equitable and transformative resources, have a total of 9 objectives, 47 strategies to meet those goals, and 64 metrics to measure our progress. And you can imagine when we've got over 100 strategies and metrics to report on, the strategic planning team needed to consider a way to share our progress updates with the board, school staff, and community members in a way that they could access what they wanted, when they wanted it, without having to go through all 100 of those as we sit here tonight. And so to that end, you may recall that last year we launched an interactive State of the Division website. This new version of this launched earlier today, and it incorporates some of the feedback that the board gave the last time we brought this to you. Any member of the public can access our State of the Division website and look at each one of our strategies. They can click on the plus button next to the strategy and open it up to see what work we did on that toward that strategy during the 22-23 school year. They can also look at any of our metrics that are there. Many of these have been built so that they are interactive, and they can look at previous years. They can shift the data to look at different demographic groups. In the interest of time tonight, I won't take you through a tour of that website, but one of the things we knew we had to do when we had so many of those strategies and metrics to report on was we had to consolidate it in a way. And the purpose for tonight's report, we've identified what we consider key metrics for each of our goals. And there's about 5 or 6 for each one of those. We'll take you through an overview of those tonight and again, have a high level look at those. If you've got questions about any of the specifics that we don't cover, you can either ask me and I may know it, or you can go out to the state of the division report. So the first key metrics are around our goal of thriving students. And the first one for that is our on-time graduation rate. This slide includes our on-time graduation rate, and our goal each year is to be equal to or higher than the state average. And for our reporting, for all of our reporting groups and for our overall graduation rate. We also have a goal to increase our rates for each one of our reporting groups and our overall results each year. We saw increases in our graduation rates last year for our Black students, Hispanic students, multi-race students, and economically advantaged students and our English learners. But our rates went down for our students overall, our Asian students, and our white students, and our students with disabilities. All of these groups were above the state average with the exception of students with disabilities. The second key metric is our SOL achievement. We want to close achievement gaps and also have pass rates for each of our reporting groups that are equal to or higher than the state. We equaled or beat the state in 16 of the 45 reporting categories and increased from 12 out of 45 in 21-22. But it's important to note that where we continue to trail the state, for the most part, is with our achievement gap group categories. You can see that we did make some gains with students with disabilities this past year, but for the most part, our Black students, our Hispanic students, our economically disadvantaged students, our English learners tend to lag the state averages. The next metric that I've got to share with you is our course failure rate. We have a goal to reduce course failures for students each year, and this number represents the percentage of students who have at least one failing grade, had at least one failing grade at the end of the year for a final course grade in our middle schools and our high schools. In our middle schools, that the percentage of students with at least one course failure dropped from 7.5% to 6.9%, and at our high schools, that number dropped from about 12% to 11.2%. And while that is a bright spot, one of the things that we have in the more comprehensive report on the state of the division is a look at this by achievement gap groups. And you will still see when you go to our course failures that we have disproportionality with our students of color, with our students who are economically disadvantaged, with our students who have IEPs. They represent a disproportionate number of our course failures. The next key metric is increasing the number of students, The next key metric is increasing the number of students mastering reading skills by third grade. And this chart focuses on the progress being made by our third grade students for the past 2 years. Meeting benchmark on this chart is determined by the classroom teacher's assessment of students being on or above grade level. As you can see, each year we have decreased the number of students performing below grade level, but we still have around 30% of our students who are not at grade level by the end of the year. And that aligns pretty closely with another metric that we have around our SOL results. Last year, our third graders had about a 64% pass rate, and you can see that their teachers rated them at about a 71% on grade level. So similar numbers there. The fifth key metric for this is our Panorama student survey results, and we hope to see our national percentiles in the top 2 quintiles when we compare to national results. In our elementary schools, we are meeting that target, but we are significantly below that in our secondary schools, and we've been kind of stuck there since we've started to give the Panorama survey. And the final metrics that we'll look at for this objective are our fidelity to both our homework and our grading policies. There are a number of questions that we ask students in a survey each year that help us to see how well we're adhering to these policies. Important to note, I think, is a survey that just came out from Ed Week a week or two ago that asked high school age students in the past year, what, if anything, has had a negative impact on your mental health? The two most common answers for kids in high schools were stress related to finishing schoolwork and homework, and stress related to grades and test results. So that's something that weighs heavily on our kids' minds. The division homework policy, one of the things that it does is it tries to ensure that our kids have a real break over our three major breaks in the year: Thanksgiving, winter break, and spring break. 2 years ago, 78% of our students indicated that they weren't assigned homework over that period. Last year, that number was 79, so up just slightly. We also ask kids about the amount of homework they receive. Our homework policy has a goal of ensuring the amount of homework students receive is appropriate and manageable for students so that they have the ability to pursue interests outside of academics when they're home from school. The number of students who feel that they're assigned too much homework rose from 17% to 21% last year. And then finally, we ask students each year about how well we're implementing our grading policy. If teachers are including things like homework or attendance in their final grade, if points are lost for late work, if grades of 0 are assigned, or if they're allowed to improve on their assessments. And in general, results here indicate that in many areas last year we moved away from close adherence to that policy. The second goal that we're reporting on tonight is empowering communities, and that has 4 key metrics. The first of those is the percentage of licensed staff who have earned a culturally responsive teaching credential. At the end of the 21-22 school year, that number was 22%, and our staff, and at the end of the 22-23 school year, that had risen to 31.5%. We have a goal of getting that to 100% by the end of the 25-26 school year. Another key metric in this area is to have the demographics of our teaching staff be proportional to our student body. This chart compares June 2022 to June 2023, and we saw a very slight increase in the proportion of our staff who were people of color. You may have, and if you remember also, this is some lagging data. You probably have already heard some things from our Human Resources Office about this year's shifts in that. So hopefully next State of the Division report we'll have a bit of an increase with that. We also use a tool called the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment, or the DESA. This is an indicator of student strengths in areas of need as they relate to social and emotional learning. All students in grades 1 through 4, 7 through 10, and 7 through 10 completed the DESA last year, and we're going to expand that out to all students in 1st through 11th grade this year. What the DESA does is it rates each student as having SEL as a strength, being at a typical level for students of their age, or being an area for which students have a need for instruction. And this chart shows that our overall numbers stayed relatively flat throughout the year, but that we do have students who move between categories. So for example, if you look at the red circle in the right, we started the year with 488 students who were in the need for instruction area on the DESA. 48% of those students moved, 52% of those students moved out of that area into having typical levels or having that as a strength over the course of the year. Conversely, though, when you look at our students who are typical, we had about 2,800 students at the typical level. About 253 of them went the other way and went back into a need for instruction there. So while that number is flat, I think the right-hand side tells a little bit of a different story for us there. I think the big takeaway for this is that both our teachers and our school counselors have a tool now where they can identify as a universal screener all of the students that may need some support in these areas. We also give the panorama survey to our families, and we have the same goals to get into the top 2 quintiles of when compared nationally. While our percentile rank went up this year, I think the most important takeaway from this is when you look at our participation rate. We dropped from over 2,000 people to 2,000 families to under 1,000 families last year. When we break down the demographics of that, it was about 82% white. So I'm not sure how valid that these results really are, that we've gotten better with what we're seeing in the Panorama survey. We are working on plans this year to have a more actively engaged role in engaging our community, and hope to see that number come up both in families who are participating in this survey and in the proportionality of our demographics who are completing that.
Do I have to hold comments? Yeah.
If you give me, yep, so give me, I'll have time at the end if you can give me just a couple more minutes. This last one's kind of a quick one to get through. So our last area is around equitable resources, and we have 4 key metrics there as well. One is around our teacher retention rate. You can see that our teacher retention rate improved from 82.9% to 88.1% over the past 2 years. We also look at our Gallup Employee Engagement Survey as one of our key metrics. The survey, if you recall, provides 3 levels of engagement for our employees. Engaged employees are defined as highly involved in and enthusiastic about their work in their workplace. Employees who are not engaged are psychologically unattached from their work and their company. And employees who are actively disengaged, lost my place here. Employees who are actively disengaged are resentful that their needs aren't being met, and they're acting out on their unhappiness. Our goals each year are to decrease the number of actively disengaged employees that we have and increase the engaged employees that we have. And you can see that we went from 16% to 14% actively disengaged over the past 2 years, and 31% to 33% of engaged employees over the past 2 years. A new metric that we've added this year is the Facility Conditions Assessment Score that you first saw in the Long Range Planners Report. This is a change. One of the metrics that we had in here in last year's report looked at our percentage of the capital improvement request that was actually funded by the Board of Supervisors. And as we looked at that this year, we didn't feel that that was really capturing the needs that we had in terms of capital. One of the reasons for that is because the allocated funding was adjusted for inflation, so that went up, but our request number was not adjusted for inflation, so that stayed the same. So it gave us a little bit of a false sense that we were actually getting a stronger funding request approved there. What you heard about recently in the Long Range Planners Report was this facility conditions assessment, which in a nutshell says that our facilities that are in either the green or the yellow area are in pretty good shape, but the ones that are in the orange or the red need some significant improvements. The Long Range Planners have made some recommendations that these schools that you see here on the bottom part of this list are the ones that get prioritized for some improvements. So we plan to, this is a relatively new metric that we're keeping. We've only done this assessment on elementary schools for the past year, but we plan to bring that back to you year over year to see how we can get all of our schools into the green or yellow. And then the final key metric for our goal focuses on building capacity. And we set a goal of having our buildings 95% capacity or under. The percentage of buildings that are at 95% capacity or over actually went up from 19% to 35% last year. I think that tells a similar story to some of the things we've heard with our long-range planners that are there. And so that's all of the numbers. I think that tells a portion of our story. I think it's also important to highlight some of the incredible work that took place in the division last year. And I won't go through all of these, but you can see that we've completed our bellwether audit. We established the Albemarle Foundation for Education. We established a Teacher and Staff Member of the Year program. We completed a compensation study. There's a lot of good things that are happening in Albemarle County with this. And then the final piece that I'll leave you with tonight is thinking about how our plan is going to evolve. Because as we know, the bellwether recommendations that came in really should become a part of our strategic plan. We shouldn't look at those as two separate things. And so we're going to be incorporating those recommendations into the strategic plan. One of the other things we've been looking at lately are the values of a community schools model and whether we want to move forward with that. We take a critical look at the plan and look at the strategies and the metrics that we had in there a couple years ago. Are those really the most impactful ones, or do we need to switch those up? And we're adding in things like chronic absenteeism. That's been an important piece for us. One of the things that we've linked in the presentation that Jamie Gellner keeps track of is a change log that says, here's a strategy maybe that we're not doing anymore. Here's something that we've added in because of that. And so I really do want to make sure I thank the team that helped to put this all together. It really spanned across technology and strategic planning and communications. And in particular, I'd like to thank Lauren Hunt and Jamie Gellner, India Hahn, Dallas Hitt, Chris Gilman, Sarah Dusenberry, and Phil Giramita. And that is the end of our report. I'd be happy to hear your thoughts or take any questions.
My comment was just, I would love to maybe, as we think, Chair Lee, if we think about kind of work sessions, for us to spend a little time with the Panorama student and parent survey, just what the data, just to understand it more, what the questions are, what the data looks like when it's given, just because those are, definitely, as you said, two places where we're pretty low, to just dig into that and just think about that.
We can certainly do that, and in fact, our fall 2023 survey closes tomorrow, so we should have some updated data very quickly for that. One piece I neglected to mention in this is one of the reasons we time the State of the Division the way we do is because budget season's coming up, right? And I would really encourage you to think about what you see in the State of the Division as a lens through which you can look at budgeting priorities for next year. Are there areas where you say, we really need to get better at that? How might the budget impact those areas?
And then the other thing, I love the facility conditions assessment. I talked to someone from Broadus-Wood actually during the day on Monday when I kind of ran into them. And I was just, one of the things I was trying to think about is, how could we maybe, as individual board members for our schools, take a look at those reports, look at them while we're walking through, but just make them more active and not just a piece of paper. I know we are using them in long-range planning, but there's so much on those that aren't going to be solved immediately. So that might just be another thing. Like, if there's a work session on those, or maybe we think about how we could use them as we're visiting schools, just to better understand what those needs are.
And just a comment, Dr. McLaughlin, on the slide that you had looking at the percentage of our capital that was funded, I think we do a lot of self-editing before we ask for what we are statutorily required to do, is ask for what we need as a school division, and I think we tend to be pretty shy about it. That when we have 85 classrooms in trailers and we have core buildings more than half a century old, and when we have, this high school center has been approved since 2019 and we won't have a shovel in the dirt for 2 more years, probably. We are not communicating forcefully enough, perhaps, our capital needs. And now that the county has unilaterally changed that process where we have one meeting, we don't have the capital committee, jointly meeting. Well, as you know, I've been focused on capital for a long time. I just think there has to be a better way to get our capital needs funded. That's it. Soapbox.
We'll be hearing a lot about this for the next year. And I think just like these kind of data systems are, near impossible to figure out how to do and how to do in a clear, concise way. So a huge thank you to everyone who did that. Because I think it's important for that data to be visual, whether it's good or not, so that we can keep it at the forefront of our mind. So a huge thank you to you and your team for that.
I also do want to comment on that because I feel like just in the time that I've been on the board, I know we've been through a lot in the time that I've been on the board, but I really appreciate the more of sharing all of the data now, even, and you're calling out things that we might not even see that are possibly more negative than it might appear. So I do really appreciate that.
Pat, I just had one quick question, and forgive me, but so with the DESA, like that's a data collection tool, but the thing I was thinking also is that when teachers do that as a universal screener, they use it to get support for the student.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, I just wanted to maybe clarify in case, it's different from like the panorama where we're just surveying. This actually is used by the teachers. It was one of the recommended strategies from the EAB as a kind of a post-pandemic way to help support students coming back. And we built it into our game plan that we used federal funding for and then continued to do it. And, but anyway, I just wanted to clarify for myself that it's actually used and the teachers work with the counselors to provide support for the students so that they can make progress. And so say a student comes in and they're typical, something's going on, right, during the school year where they develops a bit of a deficit around their social, emotional strengths that gets them to where they have a need for instruction. The teacher also can intervene with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you left. That might be another one. I would just like to potentially, as we think about work sessions, to just dig into that and understand that a little bit more, maybe how it fits with the entire social emotional curriculum.
Yeah, I also think that that's an important point that these things are not linear and not static. So I'm glad that we have this data to show us that also. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McLaughlin. Okay, last we have other business by board members or superintendent.
Do we have any update on
I did just want to congratulate Dr. Berlin, Ms. Osborne, Ms. Spillman, who will be joining us here on the dais in 2024. This is just a really important job and difficult, and I really look forward to working with all of you in the next 4 years. So that's all I have. Any other comments? Nope. All right, hearing nothing. This meeting is adjourned. I'm getting more aggressive with that every time.
And it still looks like it's brand new. When is it down together?
Yeah, I need to understand that. We heard about it one time.
Yeah, and I didn't have an infrastructure in my brain.
I can't either. Here did I? Yeah.
Okay.